Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the D and WhatIf, with another fanfiction. This is the first part of WhatIf Deku became the Midnight Vigilante. All credits for this video go to their respective authors, so please support the real author. Check out the link in the description for more details. Please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Izuku's life has been horrible for a long time. When he was 4, a doctor declared him quirkless, based exclusively on an extra toe joint, a research that has been outdated for more than a century. But who cares? He was declared quirkless, so he's useless. His best friend became his worst bully. Everyone turned his back to him. The teachers said they were there to hear and help him, but they lied because that's what they always do. They never cared for him, only for the kids with powerful quirks. Not even his mother, as much as she loved him, did not believe in his dream of being a hero. For an entire year, Isuku became the class training dummy for quirks. Many would think his life couldn't get worse. Well, think again. Because the next year, exactly on his birthday, another tragedy hit him, this time taking from him the only person that still loved him. After another bad day, upon entering his home, Isuku was greeted by the vision of his dead mother, sitting on a chair right in front of the door, face burned and eyes missing. It was such a horrible sight that Isuku couldn't even scream. He instantly went into shock. The only reason it didn't take days for the body to be found was that Mitsuki came to visit. Izuku stayed unresponsive for a few weeks. The culprit was never found by the police. Inko wasn't the first victim of this particular assassin. The media called him Eye Burner. A stupid name if you asked Izuku, but again, he couldn't even answer you at the moment. After that, Izuku has to move in with his father. Izuku was pulled out of school under the pretense of being homeschooled. As if the world, or some higher being, enjoyed torturing him. This was even worse. His father, if he could even be called that, would mercilessly beat him in every possible chance he had. Slaps, fists, kicks, bottles, even knives, and his fire breath quirk. Anything that could be used to hurt Izuku was used, some days more than once. The only care Hisashi has ever shown is not to kill him. That went for an entire year, until the day that his father, after leaving to work, he never said what his job was, left a paper behind. The paper was a list of names and dates, carefully organized in chronological order, and a single name in the list almost made his heart stop. Midoriya and Co. the 15th of July. It was his mom's death date. Immediately, praying to be wrong, Izuku went to his dad's PC and searched for the other names on the list. All of them were dead, murdered on the exact day on the list and in the same way as his mother. A single line caught Izuku's attention. Presumed cause of death, burning. The eyes were probably removed while the victim was still alive. This raised too many red flags on Izuku's head. For as much as he's only a child, he's a clever child. And his father certainly isn't a good man. Looking to the side, Izuku saw a closed door, one that his father absolutely forbade Izuku from ever entering. But at this moment, Izuku already knows too much to be scared of this. He opened the door and found exactly what he feared finding there. Many jars, with name tags under them, and organized alphabetically, almost like a trophy. A single jar was in the center of the room, with 2 familiar green eyeballs floating inside. And if that wasn't clear enough, the name tag said the rest. Midoriya and Co. Those were his mother's eyes. All this time, Izuku was living with his mother's murderer. And now he knew too much. There's no way Hisashi. Izuku will never call this monster his father again. Wouldn't figure out that Izuku knows, and then he will be the next victim. With this knowledge, Izuku left the house by the window. The door is always locked, and the keys are hidden, and ran as fast as he could. In his desperation to escape, he didn't pack anything. He didn't even put on his shoes. He just ran, trying to get as far away as he could. He thought of going to the police but immediately gave up on the idea. He had no proof, and he already knew from past experiences that the police wouldn't even hear a kid, much less a quirkless kid. If he went to the police, he would only be sent back to Hisashi, to his own death. It's almost comical how much his life changed in only 2 years. From a happy kid to a homeless fugitive from a serial killer. And there's nothing he can do except learn to survive. His next year was torture. He did learn how to survive from trash only. Because as desperate as he was, Izuku refused to steal. But his life only got worse. More than once, he got sick. More than once, he got hurt. More than once, he broke bones. Maybe it's a good thing that Hisashi got his pain tolerance and heat resistance so high, because if not, he certainly would have died from the multiple fevers he had along the following year. But somehow, he survived to his 7th birthday. A quirkless 7-year-old kid survived alone and homeless for an entire year. Guess he's not so useless, huh? But of course, the moment he starts to get optimistic is when life will choose to remember him how cruel she was. This time, it was in the form of 2 muggers that cornered him in an alley. Because obviously, the dirty shoeless kid must have something worth robbing, right? And what could Isuku, besides crouch down and cry, while the men kicked him like Hisashi did so many times, begging for them to stop, but they didn't. As the tears fell down, his mind started to go blank. He saw black on the corner of his vision. Well, guess this is where I die. I survived more than I thought I would. He felt something rising from his stomach and something at the tip of his fingers. For a moment, he lost conscience. The two muggers, maybe satisfied with their beating, or perhaps they realized Isuku really had nothing, started to leave. But then Isuku got up, and when the first mugger looked at him, his expression was different, and his eyes were yellow. Izuku had an almost maniacal grin on his bloody face, and smoke was leaving his ears. "Hey, where are you going?" Izuku asked. "You guys gave me quite the beating. Isn't it fair that I return the favor?" And before anyone could reply, Izuku opened his mouth and blew a fireball at the first guy. The guy immediately started screaming as his clothes caught fire. The second one turned to Izuku, but this time, the expression he saw was the same scared kid they attacked a few moments ago, except that his eyes were blue. "Did I? How? Sorry, I didn't want to hurt you." The second one ran to Izuku, who raised his hands in front of his face trying to protect himself from the incoming blow. But it never came. When Izuku looked up again, the man was floating in front of him, but couldn't move, like something was holding him. "Is this?" Izuku moved up his hand, and the man went up with the movement. His eyes widened. I have a quirk." He excitedly raised his arms, which launched the man in the air. Then he hit the floor with a loud thud when Izuku checked on him. He was unconscious. "Oh, no. I'm so sorry. I didn't. Calm down. This isn't the time for a panic attack. We need to leave." Izuku heard a voice, extremely like his own, saying, "What? Who said that?" Izuku asked, looking around, but there was no one in sight. "In your head, dumbass. Leave first, freak out later. The police will investigate the screaming any second now, even if it was accidental. This was illegal quirk use, and even if they let us explain, they'll call Hisashi. So, run," the voice urged him. And as scared as Izuku was at the moment, he's even more scared of Hisashi finding him. So Izuku did as the voice said and ran from the alley as fast as possible. I can question my sanity later. He ran for a good while, looking for somewhere to hide. Thankfully, his time with Hisashi and on the streets made Izuku really silent. Stealth was second nature for him, so no one saw him leaving the alley. About 10 minutes later, Izuku saw the perfect hiding spot. An old bell tower, abandoned and, some say, haunted. No one has come here for years, so as long as Izuku is careful. After entering and making sure that he was indeed alone, he heard the voice again. "Well, that was something. Who are you, and why are you in my head?" Izuku asked between heavy breaths. "Midoriya Izuku. Who else could I be?" The voice replied. "What? But I am Midoriya Izuku." Izuku replied indignantly. The voice simply chuckled. "No shit, Sherlock. I thought I was smarter than that." Izuku let out an indignant huff at this. "I'm very smart, okay." Then he added lower. "Even if everyone says I'm not." "Come on, Zu." Izuku looked up at the nickname. "No one calls me that since Mom." He felt tears in his eyes and buried his face in his knees. "No, please, don't cry now." The voice said softly. "I'll explain what I gathered, but frankly, this is as confusing for me as it is for you." "Okay, but first, are you really me?" Izuku asked, not bothering to look up again. Because this voice obviously isn't a physical person, he can make visual contact to talk. "Yup, we both are," the voice confirmed. "I think we read about this once before. Like a split per perso no lie tie." Izuku replied, struggling with the big word. "That's the word. I have a theory." The other Izuku. "Gods, this will be confusing." Confirmed. "You think we can find a mirror anywhere here?" "A mirror? I doubt it. But we can probably find a water puddle. Yesterday it rained so much." Izuku replied, getting up to look around. It didn't take long to find the puddle, thankfully clean enough for them to see their reflex. "Well, this confirms part of my theory," Izuku 2 said nonchalantly while Izuku 1 watched, stunned, raising a hand to his face. "What happened to my eyes?" Izuku 1 asked, looking at his blue eyes. "Aren't they green?" "What the heck? My eyes changed color. Is this part of my quirk? A mutation? But I use telekinesis, so I am an emitter. But maybe it has to do with our splitting. If the quirk caused my mind to split, then what does that mean? Is it possible? So this is how it feels to be on the other side of my muttering." Izuku 2 interrupted Izuku's 1 thoughts. "Interesting." Izuku 1 felt a hand patting his head, and when he looked up, he saw his own right hand. "What the?" It was easy to put 2 and 2 together. "You can move my body too." "Looks like I can." And looked down again. Izuku 1 looked at the puddle again, and this time his right eye was yellow instead of blue. "Looks like yellow is me, and blue is you. And if you mix blue and yellow," Izuku 1 started, "we get green." Izuku 2 completed. This split was a little more physical than expected. "Does it have anything to do with our quirk?" Izuku 1 mused. "I thought we were emitters, not mutation." "I think we are both," Izuku 2 said. I mean, Mom was clearly an emitter, but Hisashi, I'm not so sure. He can breathe fire. This is an emission. But maybe he also had some kind of mutation. Isuku-1 mumbled. We gain nothing overthinking about it now. Let's start testing. Isuku-2 said. Also, we need a way to differentiate ourselves. Isuku-1 and Isuku-2 are too confusing. Well, yeah, but anything comes to your mind. Isuku-1 replied. Let me see. Isuku-2 replied. For the next few minutes, Isuku-1 could hear the low mumbles on his head. Wow, he wasn't kidding. Being on the other side of my mutterings is really weird. I know. Isuku-2 finally exclaimed. You are Zuku, and I am Kuzu. Zuku and Kuzu. Isuku-1 asked. Really? Yup. It's perfect. We are like two sides of a coin. So why not just invert our names? Though I will probably keep calling you Zu. Isuku-1 thought for a few seconds. Alright, I like it. He smiled. I know we are kinda the same person. But nice to meet you, Kuzu. Likewise, Zuku, Kuzu replied, and Zuku could hear the smile in his voice. Now, how about we start testing our quirk? I thought I would never suggest it, Zuku said. Analysis time. With that, they both moved on to test their limits, starting with the telekinesis. For starters, as they thought, his quirk was like a better version of his mother's. Pulling things towards him is much easier than moving around. And he's not limited exclusively to small objects. He did launch a grown adult in the air, after all. Also, no matter what they tried, Kuzu couldn't use the telekinesis. Whenever he was in command of the body, it was like the quirk didn't exist. Testing the other side of their quirk had the same results. Kuzu can breathe fire like Hisashi, but he can also let off fire from his nose, ears, and even his eyes. Also, his hair is fireproof. They discovered it after Kuzu ended up with a bonfire in his head for 5 minutes before realizing it, and the rest of his body was really resistant to it. Like Kuzu can't use the telekinesis, Zuku can't use fire. The first round of testing ended around sunset, and with that, they had some idea of what to expect and how to start training. They decided to stay in the bell tower for the time being. That night they talked before going to sleep. Hey, Zu, Kuzu started. We have a quirk now. We really have. You think we can be a hero now? Zuku asked expectantly. Maybe, but there's Hisashi, Kuzu replied. Because, if it were discovered that Isuku is the son of a villain, they would never be able to be pro-heroes. But now, maybe we don't need to. What do you mean, Kuzu? Zuku asked again. We aren't useless anymore. We can defend ourselves, and maybe others. Kuzu replied. And we can catch Hisashi ourselves. You're saying, but that's too dangerous. You know how strong he is. I know. We can't dream of defeating him. Kuzu replied sadly. Not yet, at least. Then what? Oh, realization finally hit Zuku. Vigilantism. You want us to be vigilantes. That's it. We'll need to train hard. Dominate this quirk. But think about it, Kuzu said excitedly. Imagine the look on his face when we catch him with Mom's quirk. When we burn his face with his own quirk. Zuku thought about it for a few minutes in complete silence. Kuzu would think he was asleep if they weren't sharing a mind. And he couldn't hear every single of Zuku's thoughts. You know what? I'm in, Zuku finally said. We can't be pro-heroes anymore. But we can still be heroes. Great. We start preparing tomorrow. We'll need many things, Kuzu said. Like what? Zuku started. Well, shoes, for starters. Kuzu pointed, and Zuku looked down to his feet. It's been an entire year since he last wore shoes. There aren't many opportunities to get this kind of thing living on the streets, especially since his priority is food and water to survive. Some kind of mask too. We need to hide our face. I think we should focus on my telekinesis for now, Zuku said. Until we can get fireproof clothing, we need to be careful with what we have. Good idea. But for now, you should rest, Zu. Kuzu interrupted, seeing how tired Zuku was. I'll keep watch while you sleep. What about you? Zuku asked sleepily. I can sleep later. We can always take turns. Even when you're awake, I can sleep. Kuzu replied. Now, go to sleep. If something happens, I promise to wake you up. Okay. Good night, Kuzu, Zuku said and then immediately passed out from his exhaustion. With that, the body was fully in Kuzu's control. Kuzu, making sure that Zu wasn't about to wake up anytime soon, got up and started looking around, glancing one more time at the water puddle. This time both his eyes were yellow. Don't worry, Zu, he whispered to himself. I'll protect you. You won't be ever alone anymore. With that, Kuzu started making his way to the highest part of the bell tower. If anyone tries to hurt Zu again, well, they'll have to get past Kuzu first. Waking up the next day was an experience unlike anything Zuku had ever had in his life. Waking up was as if he had turned on the TV to a program already playing. It was the first time he consciously left Kuzo in charge. His vision was normal, he could see through his own eyes, but his limbs moved by themselves. It's an interesting feeling, to say the least, especially considering that he had access to all the senses in his body. Kuzo was carrying a stool to the bell tower. Where did he get this from? Good morning, Zu. Kuzu greeted him. How did he know Zuku was awake? Aizawa, we share your mind, remember. I can hear your every thought, silly. Right. Good morning, Kuzu. Where did you get that from? Zuku asked. From our scavenging site, obviously. So, Dagaba Beach. Makes sense. Really does. It's amazing how many things in good condition they throw on that beach. Entering the bell tower, the place was completely different from last night. There were several trinkets scattered on the floor. Zuku recognized a few things, like old pots and pans and even some clothes. Did you take all of this from the beach? Wow, how long did it take? The entire night. Kuzu shrugged. I went there while you were sleeping. He yawned. Wait, how didn't I wake up with all the movement and noise? Well, I can't say for sure, but I have a theory, Zuku said, putting the stool down. You know how I am controlling our body right now? Yeah, it's a strange feeling. Feeling my body, but not controlling it. You get used to it. Kuzu shrugged and sat down. Anyway, while I'm controlling the body, it's like you are in another part of our mind. While you were asleep, you probably went to a deeper part of our subconscious and disconnected yourself from the external world. With practice, we probably could do this consciously too. He made a motion with his fingers, or some crap like that too. Who knows how our brain really works? You think you could wake me up if something happened? Zuku asked. Probably. Anyway, I left the heavy things to bring here later. We'll need your telekinesis for that. Kuzu yawned again. You should sleep too. If what you said is true, then I can do my things while you sleep too. You read my mind, Zu. Literally. They giggled together. But first, you should start training. Kuzu said. Do you have anything in mind? Zuku asked. It's pretty simple. Can you try using your quirk on yourself? Like lifting yourself in the air. Noticing that he was in command of the body again, Zuku closed his eyes and tried grasping the feeling he had yesterday when he used his quirk. When he felt it in his hands, he tried to direct it to his own body and raised his arms. It took a few minutes, but he felt his feet leaving the floor. It worked, he said excitedly. I did it. Great job, Zu. Kuzu praised. We can test other things later, but for now, you need to get familiar with the feeling. So let's try like this. For the rest of the day, you only move yourself with your quirk. No walking until I wake up, okay? Zuku could see how this would help with his quirk. It made sense for him. It would also help him measure his limits. How long can he keep his quirk active? All right, let's do this. Zuku nodded. Now, sleep well, Kuzu. Thanks, see you later. A few seconds later, Zuku felt as if something had switched off inside his mind. Before, even if he was quiet, he knew Kuzu was there. And just the same, he knew that at the moment, he wasn't. What a strange feeling. We will have to look into this in the future, Zuku mused to himself. He never thought before to make an entry for himself in his hero analysis notebook. But now that he has a quirk, it is a good idea to analyze it too. The problem now is to get a notebook for it. But this is a problem to think about in the future. For now, Zuku will start practicing moving around with his quirk. If he gets good on this, maybe he could really fly in the future. That would be so cool. Along with his training, he notices a few things. It's not that he needs to use his hands to move things, but it's easier if he uses them, kinda like the wizards in the movie he used to watch. They didn't need a wand to use magic, but it made it easier to concentrate. However, if he wants to rely on his quirk for locomotion, he will need to practice it without using his arms. He practiced moving around the whole day, and by the time he felt Kuzu waking up, he was starting to feel the first drawbacks of overusing his quirk, headaches. It's only a little pain at the moment, but if he keeps pushing, it will probably turn into a migraine soon. Another thing he finally noticed when Kuzu woke up was how hungry he was. He was so concentrated on his training that he didn't even hear his tummy growling like a wild animal. Kuzu laughed when he noticed and spent the next half an hour making fun of him for it. Talk about a one-track mind, he said. You're impossible. But eventually, he settled down. Unfortunately, food was still a problem for them. After all, food is probably the one thing they won't find on the beach, which severely limits their options. Even if they are about to turn into vigilantes, they still don't want to be criminals. Stealing is not an option for them. Well, lucky us. There's a temporary solution, Kuzu said. Today and tomorrow, a charity group will be distributing food to the homeless, a group that we fit into, whether we like it or not. Come on, just try not to draw attention to ourselves. If someone starts asking questions, it will be problematic. Leave it to me, Kuzu said confidently. All right, the body is yours, Zuku said, and just like that, he was again in the passenger seat, watching as his body moved, though he has to hand it down to Kuzu. He moved with a confidence that Zuku never knew was possible for him. Confidence and Midoriya Izuku were two things that seemed like water and oil, but Kuzu proved that he had it on him. Like they say, no one will question if you act like you belong here, and Kuzu acted just like that. In less than an hour, Izuku had a warm soup plate in their hands. As Izuku started to eat, they had to hold down their tears because this was the best thing they had eaten in more than a year. After eating, they silently went back to their base. They'll probably stay there for a good while. Since Isuku had already overused his quirk for the day, they decided to leave the heavy lifting for tomorrow. They went to the beach and a few other things from there. Ironically enough, clothes were something relatively common to find there, especially kids' clothing. It's probably because kids grow up quickly. Most of them were in a pretty good state. He also found a good pair of red sneakers that fit him, finally, leaving aside all the garbage there. There are plenty of things that they could sell to the recycling center, so they can at least get some money. It's not much, but for now, at least it's a plan. They returned to base after mentally separating things into trash, usable, and recyclable. That night, they both end up sleeping at the same time. Although they can rest their minds separately, they still share the same body. It is impossible to escape physical exhaustion, since they want to keep their base a secret. They choose to go to the beach only in the morning or night, so the next day, while waiting for sunset, they start testing with Kuzu's quirk. They want to use Zuku's telekinesis to bring heavier things to their base. So Isuku won't use his quirk until night. This will also be an excellent opportunity to see how his quirk works on bigger and heavier things. As for Kuzu, his quirk is kinda straightforward. He can breathe fire like Hisashi, but there's more. Apparently, he can create fire from any part of his body, but any part that's not his mouth, nose, ears, or eyes lacks a way to thrust the fire in a burst. So he can set his hands on fire, but he cannot shoot the flames. This does not mean that it is useless, far from it. As soon as Isuku saw the fire, he began one of his muttering sessions. The flames cannot be thrown by his hands, but he can set fire to any part of the body. Perhaps he can use this in conjunction with punches and kicks to add destructive power. In conjunction with the fire breathing would make him an excellent mid-range fighter. Also, he can set his hair on fire. His whole head actually, which would be great for intimidation. Could he control the temperature? What if I used my telekinesis to control the flames? Are we completely immune to fire? Or do we still get burned if it gets too hot? This must be the longest muttering session that no one interrupted. But Kuzu was just as excited as Isuku to test these theories. So of course, he wouldn't interrupt. The first thing he concentrates on is the heat. He thinks about the hottest thing he could, and immediately he remembers a certain blonde with spiked hair and explosions. Despite not being his intention, he gets a bit angry at the memory. Wow, look, Kuzu. Isuku calls him, and when Kuzu looks at his hand, the flame had a green color. It didn't hurt him, but Kuzu could see it was hotter than usual. Then the fire went back to the normal color. What did you do? I thought about hot things, and Katsuki came to my mind. Kuzu had to explain, because although they share thoughts, they need to pay attention to hear them, and Isuku was muttering until a few seconds ago. It made me angry, so maybe it's related to your emotions. Isuku mused. Let's try again. This time Kuzu thought back to his old school. All the kids ridiculing him for being quirkless, many physically beating him up, and the teachers standing there doing nothing, some even humiliating him too. His anger this time was obvious, and his yellowish flames almost turning red reflected this. I guess you're right, Kuzu said, looking mesmerized at the flames in his hand. It still didn't burn him, but he was starting to feel it. If he holds it for too long, he'll probably get some first-degree burns. But how farther could it go? Unconsciously, Kuzu thought of Hisashi. With that came to his memory the vision of his dead mother in that chair and her eyes floating in that pot. Kuzu, stop. He heard Isuku calling him, almost crying. When he looked down, the flames in his hands were a bright blue, but it was flickering into a deep purple color. It's hurting. Hearing this made his anger instantly disappear and be replaced by concern. Shit. As soon as the flame returned to normal, he shook his hand, putting out the fire. I'm fine, Isuku said, but Kuzu could hear the tears in his words. Inspecting his hands, they were burned, not too unlike Hisashi's burns. This was at least a second-degree burn. Zuku's tears were probably more related to the memory than pain. Still, Kuzu felt bad for causing it. The silver lining is that he was testing the fire in his left hand, so they didn't hurt their main hand. Sorry, Kuzu said. Okay, blue flames and higher are too much for us, Isuku said after calming down. Let's try to keep the anger in check. It will be best, Kuzu agreed. After that, they tore up one of the clean clothes they managed to get and used it to wrap the wound. They did some more tests on the quirk, but most of them will have to be left for when they can try somewhere where they won't cause a fire in the entire quarter. After they get anything useful, they could probably use the beach for that. When the sun finally set, they went to the beach and started to work. As it turns out, Zuku's telekinesis is strong enough to lift most of the furniture on the beach, but not too many things at once. They'll have to train more for that. They carry an old but still good coach, a mattress, cabinets. They also get an old stove that looks like it can be repaired, among other things. It takes them a few trips to carry everything, but by the end of it all, the place is finally starting to feel like home. Isuku feels a kind of pride thinking about it. Maybe things are finally starting to look up for them. During the following weeks, they focus on various things. For starters, Isuku wants to keep studying. It is not too difficult to find a library with internet access where he could study online. The hard part was convincing the person in charge of the library why an 8-year-old child was going to the library alone. Kuzu tells a rehearsed sob story about how Isuku lost his parents in a villain attack, and Isuku was sent to foster care. However, his caretakers were horrible and abusive, so he ran away, but he still wanted to continue studying. By the end of the story, the librarian, a kind middle-aged lady, was crying fat tears. She ended up offering Isuku a part-time job. In exchange for helping her keep the library clean and organized, she got Isuku a library card and permission to use the library as much as he wanted. She always had a snack ready for him and paid for his help. It's clearly an excuse for her to help Isuku. Frankly, if she thought he would accept, she would probably offer to foster him, but she never brought it up, thankfully. It worked out much better than they were expecting. And despite the guilt Isuku felt for deceiving the kind librarian, everything worked out in the end. From there, Isuku quickly finds free online classes to continue his education. It is not the most renowned online school, but Aldra was nothing great either. The second thing they focus on is training their body. This one is handled by Kuzu. Since they share a mind, anything that one of them learns, both can use. With training, they learn to use their hands ambidextrously, so they could do 2 separate things simultaneously. This makes them really good at multitasking. For them, a pretty normal thing is Kuzu working out with a book, notebook, and pens floating in front of his face while Zuku studies. And last but not least, training their quirks, because as serious as they are about being vigilantes, they are not idiots. To try to fight with a newly acquired quirk is to ask for death, either from them or from others. It is only a few months later, with an improvised disguise, a skull mask that they bought cheaply at a costume store, and a lot of nervousness, that they go out on their first patrol. It was a simple patrol night, nothing weird. It was strangely peaceful, to be honest. But it's not like he never had calm nights. Maybe I can finish earlier today and go home take a nap. But then he got a call from Tsukachi. Spoke too soon. Sighing, he answered the call, not that he didn't know what it was about. Tsukachi only calls for 2 things, so either everyone is dying or Eraserhead. It's them again. Yep, just as he thought. Where it is this time? And how many? Shouta asked calmly. I'm sending the location. It's about 5 minutes from where you are. Tsukachi replied, and a few seconds later, he received the location. 7 muggers, all tied in chains and hanging from the wall, no burnings this time. Well, what do you know? On my way. With that, Shouta hung up the call and started running. Poltergeist and Ifrit, a famous vigilante duo from these parts that Shouta is infuriatingly familiar with. They appeared about a year ago and started simply by stopping petty thieves and the like. But then, with the experience, they started building their confidence. And with confidence, they started going after bigger fish. They still don't try going after full-fledged villains, but something tells Shouta this will change soon. Barely 5 minutes after starting running, Shouta saw the scene. Just as Tsukachi said, 7 men hanging on the wall chained. No signal of burning neither in the walls nor the men. So this time, it was only Poltergeist. Ignoring the thieves calling for help, Shouta instead took off and started running. With luck, he'll still be able to catch up with him before he disappears again. It's only been a few weeks that Shouta started investigating the duo, but he has yet to see one of them in person. They are slippery, and it is by pure chance that he finds them. About 10 minutes following the direction the vigilante was last seen, Shouta literally bumped into him. The only thing he sees is a white cloak and a skull mask. Then immediately, he activates a razor and sends his capture scarf, trapping each hand on the fabric. He feels nothing when he goes to the feet. Looking closely, Shouta sees the trick. The vigilante uses the cloak to disguise his actual height, floating with his quirk under it to seem bigger. Clever and worrisome too, because looking at his actual height, this kid is even younger than he expected. To his credit, the vigilante doesn't panic. He simply looks at Shouta's red glowing eyes and floating hair. Under the cloak and the mask, Shouta sees a pair of blue eyes. Did you disable my quirk? A voice, too young to be there, asked. That's a really cool quirk. Erasure, Shouta said simply. How old are you, kid? I'm 8. Shouta tried his best to keep his face neutral at this response. Eraserhead. Right. Since you're holding me like a criminal, I suppose you know who I am, right? The kid said, still too calm about the situation. Poltergeist, Shouta replied. A vigilante. Yeah, thought so. Poltergeist replied. The mask was hiding his expression, but Shouta had the feeling that he was smiling. Any way to convince you to let me go? Kid, you shouldn't be there. Shouta tried arguing. Is the other one as young as you? At this, the kid closed his eyes. He's asking about you, Ifrit. The kid said, looking above Shouta's shoulder. Shouta looked over his shoulder, surprised, but there was no one there. When he turned back to the kid, he saw a red glow coming from his throat and only had the time to let him go before a flame burst came from the kid's mouth. Sorry, Eraser-san, but we need to go. the kid replied, but his posture was completely different from a moment ago. Showdown tried activating Erasure again, but the kid took off his cloak and shoved it on Showdown's face before running away. When Showdown freed himself from the fabric, the only trail the kid left was a burning skull mask on the floor. The kid probably flew away. Showdown could catch him if he wanted, but with a kid this young, this will be a bad idea. Frankly, if a kid this young felt that the only way to bring justice was by doing it himself, well, society, heroes, and authorities must have failed him too much already. This case just went from slightly troublesome to a complete headache. But after this night, there's no way Showdown will let anyone else take over this case. On the other hand, Showdown caught Poltergeist, the first vigilante who was supposed to have a telekinesis quirk. But then, he breathed fire on Showdown's face. And before he shoved his cloak on Showdown's face, Showdown is sure he saw yellow eyes behind the kid's mask. But the kid's eyes were blue. His posture was also completely different. There is also what the kid said. "We need to go." He said we, not I, like there was more than one person. Looks like they are looking at this case from the wrong angle. Maybe Ifrit and Poltergeist are the same person after all. People with dual quirks are not something unheard of. But why the distinction? Looking at the cloak on his hand, Showdown quickly recognized it. It belonged to an arsonist that was caught a few weeks ago. Every witness said that the man used a cloak like that, but he wasn't wearing it when he was caught. The one who caught the incendiary was Ifrit. It seems he decided to keep the cloak as a souvenir. The cloak is fireproof. The fact that Poltergeist was wearing a fireproof cape further reinforces that the two are the same. But still, Showdown will have to further investigate it, and maybe he could give the cloak back to the kid. It's not like he had any use to a fireproof cloak. As they flew away from the pro hero, Isuku made sure to take as many detours as he could before going back home, just to make sure they weren't being followed. But as soon as they were certain they weren't, Kuzu started complaining. "Damn it, I love that cloak," he started saying. "Who is that hobo? I never heard of a pro hero like him. He must be underground. It's pretty hard to find info on them after all." Zuko chimed in. "You must be right." Kuzu relented. "But where will I get another fireproof cloak now? Maybe he'll give it back to us." Zuko tried. "Why would he do that?" Kuzu replied. "If we see him again, I doubt we'll escape as easily." "I don't know, Kuzu. I think he let us go today. It sure is weird." Kuzu sighed. "If he wanted to catch us, I'm sure he could. But why not? He seemed quite surprised when I said my age." Zuko mused. "Maybe he didn't want to arrest a kid. It must be the case." Kuzu replied. "What else could be? He wants to help us." A few seconds of silence stretched, then they started laughing. "Fat chance," Zuko said, trying to control his laughter. "An adult wanting to help us. You're a comedian, Kuzu." "I know, right?" Kuzu was in no better situation. The moment he finds who we really are, we end up either in foster care, Tartarus, or worse of all, back to Hisashi. If he wants to try to gain our trust, good luck for him," Zuko said, sobering from his laugh. "But until we stop Hisashi, there's no way we'll stop." "You said it, Zu," Kuzu replied. "If they want to stop us, it's better to bring All Might or Endeavor." "I wouldn't be opposed to kicking Endeavor in the face, though." Zuko mused. "Now you're talking," Kuzu replied. "Anyway, we should probably skip our next patrols, at least until we can get a hold of who is this hero. Something tells me we'll be seeing him again." Zuko explained. "Moo," Kuzu whined. "It was my turn to patrol. Don't be such a baby. I'll let you have the two next ones." Zuko tried to appease him. "But I want to go." "You're such a battle junkie, Kuzu." Zuko shook his head. "How about I let you choose the dinner today?" "Did that guy really pay what he promised?" Kuzu asked. "To the last yen," Zuko replied. "The good thing about making their name is that people stopped underestimating them based on their age." After getting famous as Poltergeist, Zuko started doing the occasional job here and there, usually using his analysis skills. Of course, he makes sure he's not working for villains. Usually, he helps some other vigilante or the like with analyzing villains. They pay well enough for them to live in peace at least. Not having to pay rent surely helps. "Alright, then let's eat katsudon." Kuzu cheered. "Why am I not surprised?" Zuko teased. "Because you would suggest the same." Kuzu teased back. "And you, remember." Yeah, you said it." Zuko waves him off. "Let's go then." Yeah. Kuzu cheered as they left the building. With that, they quickly left their home base and went to eat. They can work on identifying the pro hero tomorrow. It takes another week until Showdown runs into the little vigilante again. This time he was looking for them. From what Tsukachi said before, they take turns patrolling every day, which means that each one patrol every other day. But after their first meeting, the vigilante vanished for a week, maybe to look for information about Showdown. They know his hero name and quirk. There's not much else on the internet about him, though. It's really hard to find information on underground heroes, after all, as it should be. But this night, it's actually pretty easy to find him, almost as if the kid wanted to be found. Which, considering the note that literally said, "Keep your eyes up, Eraser-san," That one of the unconscious tugs that Ifrit defeated earlier had. It's probably, in fact, what they wanted. And well, Showdown indeed found them when he was looking up. Specifically, he saw a burning hand waving at him from up a building right after he stopped a mugging. When Showdown climbed up the building, he saw the kid sitting down on the edge of the building swinging his feet. "Hey, Eraser-san." The kid waved at him. Showdown saw a long chain wrapped around each of his arms, probably used in conjunction with Poltergeist's telekinesis, functioning similarly to Showdown's capture scarf. "Good to see you. Would you kindly give me back my cloak?" "I like the cloak." Showdown simply shrugged and threw the cloak to the kid. The kid took it, then looked confused to Showdown. "It looks like this isn't what he was expecting. Answer one question in return," Showdown said to the kid that was carefully inspecting the cloak. "I didn't put any tracker on it, don't worry." "All right," the kid said, staring at Showdown suspiciously. "Shoot, Ifrit and Poltergeist. Are you both?" Showdown asked. "What do you think?" The kid raised his left hand, and the chain started to dance around. Then he raised his right hand, and a flame appeared on it. Looking at the kid's eyes, one eye was blue and the other yellow. It was different from what Showdown saw last time. But then, the chain stopped, and his eyes were both yellow again. Showdown had a good idea of what this was about, but he still wanted to confirm it. "Is this the part where you arrest me? Or does it come later?" the kid asked him. "I'm not arresting you, kid," Showdown replied. "Can I talk to the other one?" "Well, a single hint, and you caught everything," the kid said, laughing. "Not today, Eraser-san. But if you don't want to arrest me, I'm taking my leave." Having said that, the kid simply jumped off the roof. Showdown ran to the border and looked down, but the kid was nowhere to be seen. Still, this was far from a failure for Showdown. He at least got a few things from the kid. Ifrit and Poltergeist are, in fact, the same person. The kid must have split personality. They are aware of each other and can probably talk among themselves. And each personality has one quirk. Or maybe they have one quirk, and each personality has access to half of it. The point is, the kid has two personalities, and they are both vigilantes. It seems like their eyes change color based on which one controls the body. And they can share the control if the heterochromia is anything to go by. Comparing this encounter with the last one, Poltergeist will probably be easier to talk to. But it seems like Ifrit is really protective of his brother. Gaining their trust won't be easy, but that has never stopped Showdown before. That night on the rooftop was far from the last time Showdown saw the kid. At least once a week, Showdown would meet the kid on the same rooftop. At first, it was only Ifrit that talked to him. But after a few months and a bit of bribery, Showdown soon discovered that food worked wonders with this kid. Ifrit finally relaxed enough to let Showdown talk with Poltergeist. The first time they really talked, Showdown was surprised. The kid was as enthusiastic as he was shy. He asked at least 20 questions about Showdown's quirk in less than a minute, and Showdown struggled to answer all of them in the end. But Showdown could easily see how smart Poltergeist is. They talked a few more times, but Showdown still didn't make too much progress with them. They always dodge any question regarding themselves, and Showdown doesn't want to try pushing them for answers either. Only a year later, Showdown would learn something new about the kids. They were sitting in their usual place, Poltergeist happily munching a sandwich Showdown brought for him when the kid shared something with Showdown. It started with a simple question. "Eraserhead-san," the kid asked tentatively. Showdown already told them his name, but Poltergeist is too polite not to use his hero name, and Ifrit is too much of a brat to use it. "Yes," Showdown replied, giving him his full attention. "Do you have?" the kid started but stopped himself. He seemed to discuss with himself, or maybe with Ifrit if he should make the question. A few seconds later, he looked at Showdown again, and he had one eye of each color, which meant that they were sharing the control body. They only did that when they were fighting or wanted to both take part in a talk. "Eye burner," he continued. His curt tone made it clear that this was Ifrit talking. "Do you know anything about him?" At that, Showdown raised an eyebrow. "I'm not giving you information on such a dangerous villain, kid," Showdown replied. "Believe me, Eraser-dad," Ifrit replied. "We know how dangerous that monster is. We aren't asking what you know," Poltergeist said right after. "Only if you know something." Frankly, Showdown didn't know much. Showdown leads this case too, but finding anything on the villain is almost impossible. The villain usually attacks once every month. His victims are people of any age, gender, or ethnicity. The only similarity between them is that they all had green eyes. He probably has a fire quirk since he burns his victims' faces after he has taken out their eyes. But while they are still alive, from his MO, he likely keeps the eyes that he plucks out as trophies. But that's all, they have no suspects. The villain is very good at covering his tracks. "We don't have much." It's all that Showdown replied, but the kid still nodded at him. Showdown noticed him clenching his fists. "We know we can't catch him yet," Ifrit started saying. "As much as I hate to admit it, he's too much for us. But he killed Mom," Poltergeist continued. "And for that, we can't forgive him. He also hurt Sue." Ifrit let the nickname escape, but Showdown didn't comment on it. "For that, I can't forgive him." Then he turned to Showdown. Do you think you can catch him in 1 year? 1 year, Showdown asked. In 1 year, on our 10th birthday. If he hasn't been caught yet, then we will act. Poltergeist, or Zoo, as Ifrit just called him, explained. We decided that when we started acting as vigilantes, and they are completely serious about this. I won't try to stop you kids, Showdown started, but I hope that if it comes to it, that by then you will trust me enough to let me help you. We'll see, Ifrit said, nodding. We need to go now. Thanks for the sandwich, Eraserhead-san, Poltergeist said, bowing. It was delicious. Then, as they always do, they jumped down from the building. By now, Showdown doesn't even bother trying to check on them. Well, Showdown has new things to check, though. The kid is the son of one of the victims of the eye burner. The villain has been active for 10 years already. This kid is 9 years old and has acted as a vigilante for at least 2 years. So this year's victims can't be the ones. But even so, he still has at least 7 years worth of victims that he needs to check. Still, if the kids want revenge, then they must have been old enough to remember their mother clearly, so it's probably been someone between 3 to 5 years ago. With a margin of error, it is best to check between 2 and 6 years, so he needs to find any women that died during this period that had a son. The kid is probably missing. He can work with that. On the way back home, Isuku couldn't help but be worried about their earlier talk. Do you think we told him too much? Maybe, but even if he somehow discovers our name, he won't know Hisashi is the eye burner, Kuzu argued. Maybe he should. Isuku almost whispered. How many more will Hisashi kill until someone gets him? You want to trust him, don't you, Zu? Kuzu said gently, but he still felt Isuku flinching. I know we said we wouldn't trust someone that easily anymore. He started, but I can't help but hope that he's being honest. Kuzu completed it when Isuku stopped talking. You don't need to explain yourself, Zu. I know how you feel. I'm sorry, Isuku replied. You don't need to apologize either. Kuzu continued. I want to believe in him too, but we can't. Not yet. Do you have something in mind? Isuku asked. Maybe, Kuzu replied. We'll give him a chance. 1 more year. We'll know what he really wants by then. Okay, and if in the end we can't trust him yet, then we cut all the ties. You already analyzed pretty much his whole combat style. Even if we can't defeat him, if he wants to catch us. Isuku giggled. Good luck for him. With the discussion settled, they went to sleep. This case is even more complicated than Showdown thought. Why is it so hard to locate a kid? When Showdown got home, instead of going to sleep as he would usually, he went straight to check on the files related to the eye burner case. He skidded through the victims in the period of time, but he found much more than he was expecting. As much as the eye burner attacked anyone with green eyes, most of his victims were women. Kimitoshi, Hoki, Fumitaka, Koki, Midoriya, Yasukatsu, Toyokuni, Raigo, and some others were all women who had children. Showdown went through each kid's quirk too, but none of them had a quirk that could belong to the vigilantes. Fire quirks are rare enough as it is. A combination of fire and telekinesis is even more so. Looking deeper for the parents, he found 5 possibilities. Hoki had a minor fire quirk. Her fingers were basically a lighter. Toyokuni could control small fires but couldn't create them. Raigo could move small objects so long they weren't more than 2 meters from her. Midoriya could pull small objects in her direction. Yasukatsu could make light objects float. A mutation could make any of these quirks strong enough to be the vigilante, but none of them looked like it could be. Checking the other parent, Showdown found something interesting. Midoriya Hisashi, quirk, fire breath, pretty self-explanatory. So the Midoriyas had a fire and a telekinesis quirk. Could it be? Showdown checked on their son. They had only one but his quirk. Well, there wasn't one. He's listed as quirkless and dead. Checking on, Showdown found something really weird. Midoriya Co. was found dead by her neighbor. Her son, Midoriya Isuku, was the first one to find the body, but at the time, 5-year-old kid went into shock when he saw her body. After that, he lived with his father and disappeared from the map. It said that the kid was homeschooled. But then, 1 year later, a fire happened in their home. It says that the father wasn't at home at the moment, and no one knows what caused it. But a single body was found, too burnt to be recognized, but judging by the size, it was declared Midoriya Isuku. After that, the father moved to another house. There's something strange with this case. Showdown's guts are screaming at him. The Midoriyas are, at the moment, Showdown's best lead, both for the vigilante and the eye burner. Still, Showdown will focus for now on building trust with the kid. Hopefully, 2 years are enough for the kid to tell him the truth. In early July, a year after the conversation about the eye burner, Showdown knew his time was running out, but he still didn't have enough to know who the serial killer really was. His investigations into the Midoriyas did not bear much fruit either. Without a valid reason, Showdown cannot reopen the investigation into the child's death. And unfortunately, there is not a single mark on Hisashi's name to justify an investigation. Showdown has not yet confirmed with the problem child, but he is 90% sure that the little vigilante is Midoriya Isuku. Probably stress and trauma caused a forced manifestation of his quirk. The personality disorder likely has the same cause. The point is Showdown will meet the kid today as usual, and he is debating with himself whether he should bring up the case. To his misfortune, the kid beat him to it. Hey, Eraser. Oh, great, Ifrit is always harder to talk to. It's like Showdown is always walking on eggshells with him. I can hear the gears on your head from the other building. What's on your mind? You, Showdown replied before thinking. Me, poltergeist. Both, Ifrit asked, smirking. Both, Showdown replied. The absence of his usual sarcastic remark made Ifrit drop his smirk, realizing it must be serious. Showdown sighed before continuing. You know, my offer still stands. I meant what I said. I'm sure you meant. Ifrit sighed, closing his eyes. But still, Showdown already brought this up a few times. The offer to adopt the kid. The first time he offered, Ifrit laughed as if it was the funniest thing he had ever heard in his life. Showdown simply dropped it at the time. But after the third offer, he knew Showdown was serious. To Showdown's surprise, the one who denied it was Poltergeist, putting in the kid's words, "You don't know who we are. If you knew it, I'm sure you wouldn't want us." Showdown tried many times to assure the kid he didn't care who the kid was, but it was useless. Showdown still brought the offer a few times, but the kid never accepted. A few more days, 2 weeks at most. Poltergeist snapped Showdown of his thoughts. After that, if you still accept us. Showdown didn't need an explanation to know what the kid was talking about. It was time for the kid's plan. He'll go after the eye burner. Problem child, Showdown called softly. As I said before, I won't stop you, but would this help your investigation? The kid interrupted Showdown, pulling a portable camera from under his cloak. We've been debating it, and we want you to have it. Showdown took the camera and started looking through it. The first image was of a house. The second one had a focus on the house number. The third one had the street name. The fourth photo was a hand-drawn map, showing a house with 5 rooms, a living room, a kitchen, 3 bedrooms, and a bathroom, probably the house in the photos. The fifth image was inside the house. It looked like a perfectly normal house. One would think that at least 3 people lived there. He lives alone, never married again. Showdown heard Ifrit saying, sometimes, I wonder if he really loved her. Showdown kept scanning through the pictures, detailing the house's layout, until he stopped on the first suspicious thing. A photo of an open drawer, several surgical instruments stored in it, certainly not in the right condition. The next photo had a closed door, with too many locks on it, 5 locks and 3 padlocks. Showdown watched the details for a few seconds, but just before moving on to the next one, he felt a tug on his scarf. He saw the kid looking at him with a troubled look on his face. The next ones are disturbing, Poltergeist said worriedly. Showdown saw many disturbing things in his life, but he had to admit it. The kid was right. The next few photos are disturbing. The photos, which Showdown assumed belonged to the room with the locked door, showed several jars arranged on shelves like pickle jars. But what the jars contained were eyes, specifically green eyes. Like all the others, the photos showed various details, including close-ups showing the jars up close and the labels with the victims' names on them. The last photo was of a jar separated from the others. This jar was labeled Midoriya & Co. When Showdown looked at the child again, he saw tears falling from his blue eye. The yellow eye was not crying, but he seemed no less troubled by the memory. Putting the camera aside for a moment, Showdown knelt in front of the kid and wrapped him in a hug. The kid buried his head in Showdown's scarf, and he could hear his sobs. Midoriya Hasashi, Ifrit said, full of venom. That's his name. I is th that you know enough. Poltergeist stuttered. Sika can you? I can, Showdown replied. Thank you for trusting me, kid. He added a few seconds later. We'll catch him, I promise you. They stood like that for a few more minutes until Showdown noticed the child's breathing quieten and the hiccups stopping. Then the kid pulled out of the hug. This time both his eyes were yellow. He was already exhausted. Ifrit explained, we've been discussing this for a few days, and I know he didn't sleep last night. I'll have to make a few calls, Showdown said, getting up. But 2 weeks is enough to prepare a raid. I'll make sure he's caught. Be careful, Eraser, Ifrit said, turning around to leave. I know I don't need to say this, but I would know how dangerous that man is. The next part is barely a whisper. I lived with him. Meet me here again in a week, okay, Showdown said, and the kid nodded. After that, they left. Showdown didn't bother leaving. He immediately got his phone and called Tsukachi. Eraserhead, you never call me. What happened? Eye burner. We got him now. Showdown answered. I'm going there immediately to discuss, but I have in my hands more than enough proofs of his identity. You what? Tsukachi replied. Showdown is sure the man just spat his coffee. All right, I'll be waiting. Don't bother knocking. The door will be unlocked. With that, Showdown hung up and went straight to the police station. When asked about his sources, Showdown simply said he had found a new informant, Tsukachi, who was already involved in the case and knew about Showdown's relationship with the Vigilantes, did not question. The evidence was all there and clearly not edited footage. After much discussion, a few phone calls, and a week to prepare everything, a small team was assembled consisting of Eraserhead, 3 other underground heroes, Tsukachi, and some policemen. A small support team has also been set up to evacuate the neighbors if Hisashi tries to start a fire to use as a smokescreen. The raid's objective was simple: surround the house and apprehend Midoriya Hisashi. With everything decided, the date for the attack was set for July 15th. The day before the attack, Showdown met with the child once again. He handed a tracker to the child. All he had to do was press the button on it, and Showdown would automatically receive the location. He also made the vigilantes promise not to try to participate in the attack. And after all the preparation, the day of the attack finally arrived. On the night of July 15th, Midoriya Hisashi's house was surrounded. The attack began without any problems. The first squad, led by Eraserhead, efficiently broke down the front door and stormed in. The house's layout seemed to be exactly like the map the kid made, but no one inside. Eraserhead went for the first room while another hero checked the kitchen. "Clear," he said after checking it. "Clear," another one yelled. "Clear," came from the kitchen. "Clear," from the main bedroom. The only one left was the locked room. Even knowing what was there, Eraserhead was already dreading what he would find. "Password, you're it," Eraserhead said to the other hero. Password. His quirk was a minor telekinesis, 2 meters radius, practically useless in combat but perfect for opening any lock. The hero himself is also one of the greatest proofs that a hero should not be judged by his quirk. On it, putting his hand above the locks, they started opening one by one. After opening it, Eraserhead was quick to kick the door and jump inside, Erasure already activated and scanning the room. Again, it was just like the kid's photo, tens of jars with green eyes floating around. But again, no one was inside. "Clear," Eraserhead announced, deactivating Erasure. "Damn, where is he?" A few minutes later, the entire squadron was tearing the house apart, looking for clues. The jars were all secured as evidence, as were the medical instruments. The house is obviously the right one. All the evidence against the eye burner is there, but no sign of Midoriya Hisashi. He should be here. There is no way he could have learned about the attack unless he had a source in the police. But even if he had, the raid was kept secret from everyone who was not participating in it. No, he was in the house, but somehow he managed to escape. The only way this could have happened would be looking at the display stand in the center of the room, where Midoriya and Ko's eyes were. Eraserhead saw a carpet. He kicked the display and examined it. "Son of a," he called his squad. A trapdoor he must have escaped through. Looking inside, he found a long tunnel. It was impossible to tell where it would come out, but it was clearly straight to the end. "Password, with me, we will check the tunnel. The rest follow our signal from the surface." After a few nods, Eraserhead jumped down and started following the tunnel, careful of any possible ambushes. Probably halfway through the tunnel, Eraserhead received another signal, but this one wasn't from anyone on his squad, and he knew exactly who it was from. "Damn it, let's hurry," Eraserhead yelled and started running. Password followed him in shock. He had never seen Eraserhead lose his composure like this. But how could Showdown not lose his composure? Because this signal came from the tracker, Showdown left with the kid. And receiving this signal today can only mean a single thing. The kid, his kid, is facing the eye burner and probably alone against him. Showdown never ran that fast in all his life. Isuku is many things: vigilante, trouble magnet, trauma box, walking museum of scars, to name a few. However, a liar is not one of them. So when they promised his dad Eraserhead that they would not try to participate in the attack on Hisashi's house, they did indeed keep their promise. However, there was no way they wouldn't watch closely. Eraserhead probably knew that, so he didn't make them promise to stay away, just not to participate. When the attack started, Isuku was there watching everything while hiding nearby. However, after a few minutes, when there was no sign of conflict, Kuzu began to get a bad feeling. Until everything clicked. There is no way Hisashi never prepared for a situation like that. The house probably had a hidden escape route prepared. The only thing that stopped Isuku from having a breakdown right there, because how could he have let something so simple go by? This way Hisashi will run away again. And it's his fault. Was Kuzu already starting to run behind the house, still careful to stay away from the police and heroes nearby? Surprisingly, it was not that difficult to find the traces of an underground passage. If they had been looking for it, the heroes would probably have found it by now. Looking at the direction of the trail, Isuku deduced that it would lead to the construction site a few blocks away and immediately began to fly there, praying that he was right because if not, Hisashi would surely have escaped. Isuku arrived at the place just in time to notice something moving on the ground and hide. They saw a hidden trapdoor open, and a very familiar figure came out from inside. Midoriya Hisashi. The man in question got out of the trapdoor, closed it, and covered it with some cement bags, then dusted himself and started walking away. Well, it's all or nothing now. Isuku and Kuzu have spent 3 years waiting for the day when they would meet this man again. And now is the time. Justice, revenge. Isuku sat cross-legged on a nearby scaffolding and took off their shoes. They wouldn't survive this battle. Then called the man monster. Hisashi. Hisashi turned at him, and seeing the skull mask, he grinned. Oh, the famous vigilante came for me. He asked, I feel so loved today. You won't be grinning for long, Kuzu said, then threw his mask away. They want the man monster to know who they are. Brat. How? Hisashi asked, then looked at his eyes and saw one blue and one yellow. Your eyes. The only thing worth you had. And you lost it. Shut up. You won't escape again, Hisashi. Kuzu yelled at him. They pulled the tracker Eraserhead gave them from his cloak and pressed the button. Let's hope he arrives on time. Calling help. The monster provoked. You're still the same crybaby. Oh, no, Hisashi. You don't get it. Kuzu said. The backup is not to save us, Zuku said in a low tone. It's to save you. Kuzu completed before jumping down in front of Hisashi and discarding his cloak. Hisashi looked at his face for a moment and took a step back. Izuku's face was perfectly split into two expressions. His left side had a sad expression but had a smile on his face and tears coming from his blue eye. His right side had a feral grin, the yellow eyes sparkling in anticipation. It was like looking at two different persons at the same time. Prepare yourself, Hisashi, they said in unison. Today, we bring justice, vengeance. Saying that, Kuzu threw the tracker at Hisashi's face, aiming at the eyes. Hisashi threw a hand in front of his face to block the projectile, but that was exactly what Kuzu was aiming for. The moment Hisashi lowered his arms, Kuzu was already in front of him, drop-kicking him in the chest, both feet glowing with green flames. The monster's eye widened at the attack and he took a few steps back trying to recover his breath, then opened his mouth and threw a flame wave at the kid, who took it head-on. Hisashi grinned and was about to taunt the kid when he felt a kick to his chin, falling to the floor. He looked at the now doing a handstand with his leg outstretched in a kick. Kid who didn't look fazed by his burning clothes and the small burns on his face. What was that? You should be quirkless, Hisashi screamed, but then felt a chain wrap around his legs. We should also be dead. But we aren't, Zuku said, with his hand stretched and the chains dancing in his arms. He pulled on the chains, knocking Hisashi to the ground and pulling him close. But Hisashi was tougher than he looked. He opened his mouth again and aimed his flames on the chains, which soon started to melt by the heat. You damn brat, Hisashi yelled again as he stood up. When I am done with you, you will wish you had died in the dark alley you crawled through to get away from me. Izuku didn't reply anymore. Instead, Kuzu summoned his flames again. This time even hotter, the yellow flames glowing even brighter than the green ones. He went to Hisashi again and punched him in the arm. The fire burned straight through his sleeve and left a first-degree burn on his upper arm. Seeing that, Kuzu smiled. He won't suffer any burn unless he spends 10 minutes holding his yellow flames. This means that Hisashi's fire resistance is weaker than his own. It makes sense, for as hot as Hisashi's flames are, they aren't even close to Kuzu's. Let's up the heat a bit more, Kuzu said, holding both of Hisashi's arms and summoning his flames again, this time bright blue. Hisashi's eyes widened when he started feeling his skin burning. So, Hisashi, how does it feel to be burned? Then he opened his mouth and breathed a just as bright blue fire wave on the man's face, who started screaming in pain. What's the problem? Didn't you do the same to Mom? He asked, throwing another punch in his chin. Then, Zuku held him with his telekinesis and threw him up before flying after him. This is Mom's quirk, Zuku said, looking the monster in the eyes. He held Hisashi in place, keeping his mouth shut. I couldn't have asked for a better quirk. Then he dropped Hisashi, looking at his hands, then at the man falling to the ground again. Izuku started remembering everything the man did to him. Kuzu felt his anger spiking. Zuku felt only sadness for what the man had become. But both emotions were at their maximum. Looking at his right hand, Kuzu called on his flames once more. This time, they were a bright purple. This has already gone too far, Kuzu said and heard Zuku humming in agreement. All right, let's put an end to this. Then Zuku let go of his telekinesis, and they dropped after Hisashi, already aiming their knees at his chest. Showdown found another trapdoor at the end of the tunnel, no doubt leading out. He tried opening it, but there was something heavy holding it down. Damn it, Showdown doesn't have time to waste with this. The kid, his kid, is facing a villain and serial killer right at this moment. Showdown needs to get there before it's too late. Showdown started punching the door, but it didn't budge. What the heck is holding this thing? Damn it, why doesn't Showdown carry explosives with him? He heard a panting sound behind him. That's right, password is with him. He's a professional at that. Explosives. Do you have it? He asked. The hero gave him a skeptical look. Hurry up. I need to get up there, now. This was enough to convince the other hero, who gave Showdown a small stick explosive cluster and a detonator. Showdown didn't waste any time sticking it to the trapdoor. And taking a few steps back, less than he should, he pressed the detonator. As soon as moonlight came through a cloud of dust, Showdown climbed out of the tunnel, leaving a coughing password behind him. Leaving the tunnel, Showdown immediately started looking for the kid. Poltergeist. Ifrit. He started screaming for them. Where are you, kid? Showdown was searching frantically when he saw a shadow right above him. He saw someone falling when he looked up and barely had time to dodge. When he looked at the man on the floor, his eyes widened. This was Midoriya Hisashi. He was completely beaten and full of burnings. He probably had broken bones, if not from the fight, from the fall he just took. The man looked at Showdown and raised his hand. Help him. Hisashi didn't have time to finish his sentence before someone landed on his stomach with both knees. Showdown had to hide his face from the impact, but when he looked, he saw a mop of green hair, a face covered in freckles, upper chest exposed because of his burnt clothes. But besides that, the kid only had minor burns in his body. Showdown's eyes lingered on the many scars on the kid's chest for a moment, but then looked up and saw a teary blue and an angry yellow eye. There's no doubt about who the kid is. This is Ifrit and Poltergeist. Midoriya Isuku. The kid grabbed the man by the collar of his shirt and brought his face closer. Then he raised his right hand, which was glowing a bright purple from his flames, and started bringing it down to the man's face. Kid, Showdown said, and the kid's hand stopped just an inch from the man's face. The kid looked up and saw Showdown, then looked once more at the man's face, then at his hands, and dropped the man back to the floor. The man hit his head on the floor with a loud thud. Hisashi wasn't conscious anymore. The purple glow on the kid's hand slowly dimmed. Eraserhead Sen. He heard the kid's voice as the kid looked at him again. He didn't look sad or angry anymore, only lost. Does he deserve to live? Poltergeist asked him. He looked at the man one more time and brought his left arm above his eyes. After everything he did, why shouldn't I pluck his eyes out, as he did to Mom? Then the kid grabbed his collar again and brought him closer. Showdown saw a purple glow on his throat as he started talking again. Showdown-san, Ifrit said, why shouldn't I burn him alive, as he did to Mom? As he did so many times to Zu. Then the kid looked Showdown in the eyes and asked, why, Dad? Why does this man get to live, but not Mom? And this question almost broke Showdown's heart. How was he supposed to answer this? Showdown's answer will be what decides if this kid will dirt his hands with blood or not. Does Hisashi deserve to live? Frankly, probably not. And even if he does live, the man will be forever locked in Tartarus. But this kid, his kid, shouldn't have this monster's blood on his hands. Isuku, Showdown said, and the kid looked at him in shock. Then brought a hand to his face, apparently remembering that he wasn't wearing a mask. Maybe this man deserves to die. Maybe he doesn't. But one thing you can be certain of. I won't love any less regardless of your decision. And these must have been the right words because the kid drops the man again and jumps at Showdown, hugging him and sobbing uncontrollably. When the rest of the squad arrived, Showdown simply gestured to the unconscious man on the floor and asked for an ambulance to check on the kid. Showdown can see the kid has at least a third-degree burn on his right hand, but he might have other wounds. When Zuko woke up, the first thing he felt was the pain in his right hand. He looked down and saw it wrapped in bandages. Right, he used his purple flames against Hisashi. No matter how resistant he is against fire, flames that hot are bound to hurt him. He wondered how bad it looked. He tried moving his left hand to brush the bandages but felt a tug on his wrist. When he looked down, he was cuffed to the bed. We've been cuffed since we got transferred to this room. He heard Kuzu. Showdown almost punched the policeman when he heard it. This brought a smile to Zuko's face. I guess this is better than waking up on Tartarus. Right, Zuko said, shrugging. Where is Aizawa-san? He left a few minutes ago, saying something like. Kuzu cleared his throat and took a deeper voice. This is completely illogical. This is a kid, not a criminal. Someone will lose their job. Zuko giggled. He was about to reply when he heard someone approaching. Let me deal with them. Zuko nodded and closed his eyes, passing control of the body to Kuzu. When he opened his eyes again, both were yellow. The door opened a few seconds later, and a furious duo of Tsukachi and Eraserhead entered, followed by another policeman. What are you waiting for? Showdown asked. Uncuff the kid. The policeman turned to Tsukachi with an uncertain expression, but the detective just gave him a glare. Are you deaf? Uncuff the kid and leave. Tsukachi said angrily. The policeman nodded and immediately went to uncuff Isuku. Then he took the cuffs and left the room, ensuring to avoid both Tsukachi and Showdown's glares. Kuzu saw a small bruise on his wrist and tried to massage it with his right hand, but his fingers were immobilized by the bands. He frowned for a second and gave up on trying. When he dropped his arm back, he felt a hand gently rubbing his wrist, and when he looked, he saw Showdown sitting next to his bed, looking at him with a worried expression. Everyone stayed in silence for a few minutes, nobody really knowing what to say. Showdown was absolutely furious. First, it took 5 hours just for him to be able to go visit Isuku in his room. He made sure to go check with the doctor first. The doctor went through all the injuries Isuku had, which surprisingly weren't many. The worst part was the third-degree burning on the kid's right hand, and even it was caused by his own quirk and not by Hisashi. Other than that, he only had some minor burns. Isuku seems to have immense fire resistance. After that, Showdown went to check the kid in the room the doctor indicated, and what he found made his blood boil. The policeman in front of the room acting as if he were guarding a prison cell would be bad enough. But then, when Showdown enters the room, what does he find? Isuku glaring at his left arm as if it had offended him. Getting closer, what made the kid so upset became obvious. Isuku was cuffed to the bed with quirk suppressant handcuffs. Showdown audibly gasped at this, and it was enough to get the kid's attention. The kid's yellow eyes said everything Showdown needed to know. When Showdown questioned the guard outside, he had the nerve to say it was just a precaution, to make sure that the vigilante would not run away again. With that, Showdown talked quickly with Isuku and then left the room, practically spewing steam out of his ears from how angry he was. Then he picked up the phone and made 2 calls. The first and simplest was to call Tsukachi. After explaining what had happened, the detective was as furious as Showdown and said he would be at the hospital in 20 minutes. The second call was to Netsu, because unfortunately, if he wants to solve this problem, he will need to sell his soul to Satan, specifically the rat Satan. After Tsukachi's arrival and having managed to get Isuku uncuffed, they stayed in the room in silence for a few minutes. Showdown gently massaged Izuku's bruised wrist. No one knew how to start the conversation. Showdown heard a sigh, and the kid started talking. I know you have questions. It is useless to stall any further. Ifrit started. All right, Tsukachi replied, pulling a recorder. As you probably know, I am legally obliged to record this talk. But if you start feeling uncomfortable at any moment, we can have a break. And if needed, we can continue this another day. Okay, Ifrit replied, taking a deep breath. Let's get this over. With this, Tsukachi started recording. This is Police Detective Tsukachi Naomasa of the Musutafu Police Station. Today's date is July 16th, 2xxx. The current time is 8:21. I am here with Midoriya Izuku-kun and his current emergency foster guardian, Aizawa Showdown-san, in Musutafu General Hospital. Then Tsukachi gave a nod to Isuku and Showdown. Introduce yourselves. Aizawa Showdown, pro hero, Eraserhead. Showdown said curtly. Isuku took a deep breath, closing his eyes, then opened again, showing a blue and a yellow eye. We are Midoriya Isuku, but to make it easier, I am Kuzu. Kuzu. Finally Showdown had a name to call him. Aka, Vigilante Ifrit, and you can call me Zuku. Vigilante Poltergeist, Zuku said right after. The 2 vigilantes are the same person? Tsukachi asked, surprised. Their statement is true. We are, but we also aren't. Kuzu replied. I am Ifrit, and Zuku is Poltergeist. I can't use Zuku's telekinesis, and Zuku can't use my fire. We are different persons as much as we are both Midoriya Izuku. Truth, Tsukachi said to the recorder. Do you know how this happened? Well, we have a few theories, but let's start from the beginning. Kuzu replied, and Showdown braced himself for the story. Do you know about the statistics for quirkless kids? With that, Kuzu started explaining their story, from before when Izuku still had only one personality. How he remembers his life before his 4th birthday. How he was diagnosed as quirkless, his father abandoned them, the bullying started at the school, and then, a year later, he found his mother's body. After that, he started describing his life with Hisashi. He took off his hospital gown and started pointing each scar on his body and explaining with a disturbing number of details how he got each one. After the scars, he told them about the day Hisashi forgot a folded paper cover that had a list of all the victims of the eye burner and how that ended with Izuku finding Hisashi's trophy room. And then how Izuku became desperate and fled the house without taking anything. Why didn't you try to look for the police or a hero? Tsukachi asked, and Kuzu started laughing at the question. Police, heroes, are you serious? Kuzu asked like he had just heard the most ridiculous thing in his life. The teachers at my school did not believe that I was bullied even though I had a giant blast scar on my shoulder. Do you really think that if I went to the police station and told them that my father was a serial killer, they would have listened to me? You might, but they would never let me talk to you. What would happen is that they would send me back to Hisashi, or else I would end up in foster care. And frankly, between foster care and going back to Hisashi, at least being homeless, I had some chance of surviving. Now, Tsukachi looked completely horrified. Obviously, everything the kid just said rang truth for him. And as much as it pains Showdown, he also knows that it's true. If Izuku had come to the police, they would have been ignored the moment the word quirkless was said. And worst, they would probably have called his father, and if that had happened, Showdown doesn't want to even think about it. Anyway, Kuzu continued. As you know, there was a fire, and they found my body inside. It happened months after I ran away. But I am obviously here and alive, right? Well, I have a good guess on what happened. After running away, Hisashi tried looking for me but never found me. If it was found that I was missing for months and never reported, he would have been investigated. Well, he must have got a kid with a similar body structure to mine, and Kuzu didn't finish the sentence, but Showdown could see him gritting his teeth. And well, around the same time, another child disappeared. He was reported dead months later, but neither the body nor the person responsible was ever found. I saw his picture in the newspaper. The resemblance was uncanny. After that, Disturbing revelation. Everyone in the room needed a break to process the new information. Hisashi's list of crimes is only getting longer by the second. Honestly, even if you only count the eye-burner murders, Hisashi would probably end up with life imprisonment. And now we add abuse and arson to the formula. The break ended a bit earlier than Showdown would have liked, but Isuku said he wanted to end this as soon as possible. Showdown could only think that he was trying to spare Isuku from the memories. Isuku hadn't said a single word since his introduction. Surprisingly, the next part was much less disturbing than the rest of the story. The year this child spent living on the streets was safer for him than the last two when he had a home and family. This is disturbing in a completely different aspect. After explaining the event that led Isuku to develop both his quirk and his dual personality, Kuzu delved into his theory of how the two work. What I am going to talk about now are just theories. After all, I am not some kind of mental expert, but it is the only explanation that makes sense, Kuzu said. And with Showdown and Tsukachi's nod, he started. For starters, although Isuku has retained most of our original personality, it's not like he's the original Isuku. Just like me, he has some things missing. He emphasized the quotation marks on the missing. It is quite simple to tell the truth. I am a different side of Isuku Midoriya's personality. I was born out of his anger, and since I'm basically his anger, Isuku cannot feel anger, hatred, or other similar emotions, Kuzu said, then held a hand before Showdown could make a question. Yes, I know that we both decided to go after Hisashi, and that we certainly both resent him for what he did. But it was I who wanted revenge. Isuku never hated him because he can't. Frankly, Showdown didn't know what he could say. Now that he thinks about it, he noticed Isuku crying many times in the 2 years he's been interacting with the kid. But Kuzu never showed any sign of tears. But what the kid is implying is, thankfully most emotions are still shared. We can both feel happiness, for example, but Isuku doesn't feel anger. And I don't cry. Kuzu continued his explanation. He was talking lower and faster by the second. The kid will probably start muttering any second now. I know I have most of the negative emotions, while Isuku has most of the positive ones. What do you mean by negative emotions? Tsukachi asked. Isuku and I are quite opposites when you think about it. I am short-sighted, Isuku is patient. I am resentful and Isuku is forgiving. I am distrustful and Isuku is trustful. I am petty and angry and Isuku is all sunshine and smiles. Kuzu replied simply. I'm not saying that these emotions are bad. They are both part of us. Denying them would be denying who I am. Then, before he could get too philosophical, he shook his head and looked unsurely at Tsukachi. Anyway, this is my story. With the statement concluded, Tsukachi turned off the recorder, but for the next few minutes, no one dared to say any word. This was honestly much more than Showdown expected. After this story, Showdown is honestly thankful the kid ended up as a vigilante because if he had turned on a villain, Showdown wouldn't be surprised. Is this the part where you send us to Tartarus? To everyone's surprise, the one to break the silence was Poltergeist, Isuku. What? Showdown asked, horrified at the kid thinking he would be sent to Tartarus. Just the prospect is terrifying. It makes sense, doesn't it? The kid continued. I am a wanted vigilante, and now you have proof of who I am. I am the son of a supervillain and serial killer. I almost killed Hisashi, no matter how much he deserved it. And I just confessed 3 years of illegal public quirk usage in front of the lie detector detective, so he knows it's all true. Where else could you send me? Kid, Isuku, look at me, Showdown said, and the kid looked at him. For the first time, Showdown saw the same expression in both the kids' personalities. It was fear. No one is sending you to Tartarus, okay. You're not a villain, and you'll never be. Then, what will happen to us now? Isuku asked again. Truth be told, what the kid said makes sense. No matter what they do, this kid has been breaking laws for 3 straight years. Showdown is more than prepared to start a war against the Hero Commission if they try to send Isuku to Tartarus. But frankly, unless a solution suddenly falls from the sky, Showdown is at a loss. I might have the answer for that question. Well, the solution doesn't fall from the sky. Instead, it falls from an air vent right above them. And it's rat-shaped. Am I a mouse? A dog? A bear? Who knows? I'm the principal of UA. Nenzu, the rat Satan introduced, raising his right paw. And well, when Nenzu said he would be there soon, Showdown didn't expect to be so soon. Though he shouldn't be surprised. When it comes to the rat, nothing is unexpected. When Showdown looked back to Isuku, his eyes were practically sparkling at the sight of the chimera, but he didn't say anything. A few seconds later, Showdown forced a cough to get their attention back. Nenzu, I wasn't expecting you that soon, Showdown said. Of course, it's not every day you ask me a favor, the rat replied. And I've been dying to meet Mustafu's mysterious vigilante duo for a long time already. Then he turned to Isuku. It's nice to meet you, Nenzu, the kid whispered, half in awe and half in fear. He opened his mouth to say something else, then his left hand covered it, muffling it. We'll have time for fanboying later, Isuku, Kuzu said after uncovering his mouth. Then he nodded to Nenzu again. You said you have the answer to our question. What will happen to us now? Of course, it's pretty simple, to be honest. I have a new project that I've been wanting to put into practice for some time now, the rat said, taking 2 identical folders from somewhere and giving one to Showdown and the other to Isuku. Also, Showdown-kun, the last pages have something I'm sure you'll like. Showdown looked at the folder titled Project Vigilante for a few seconds and then started to quickly go through the pages. For now, he just wants to know what it's about. He'll have time for details later. The project is somewhat simple. A vigilante rehabilitation project, where, if approved, the vigilante will undergo training at the UA, under the supervision of a mentor. That mentor being one of the professors at the UA. At the end of the project, if he is deemed fit, he will receive a special hero's license and will be able to participate in the tests to receive an official one afterwards. The details of the studies and training are all listed on the sheets, but looking quickly, Showdown noticed that it is basically the UA as hero course. And coming to the last pages, Showdown had a more than pleasant surprise. The last papers were not about the project, but official documents just waiting to be signed. Adoption documents. Showdown looked at Isuku, who was reading the papers with an expression of disbelief, but he easily noticed the tears threatening to fall from his blue eyes. After everything, Isuku whispered. Then he looked at Showdown with hopeful eyes. Can someone like me be a hero? Showdown looked him in the eye with all possible seriousness and said firmly, You are already a hero, Isuku, and one of the best I've ever met. And the magic happened. The floodgates opened and the tears began to fall. Showdown gently hugged him, while Isuku sobbed dozens of thank yous into the hero's arms. After a few minutes, Isuku finally calmed down, and Showdown decided to drop the other bomb. He handed the adoption papers to Isuku and once again asked the question. Isuku. The kid looked up after a few seconds of staring at the papers in disbelief. Will you let me adopt you? And the second wave of tears and hugs began. This time only from one eye, since Kuzu decided to join in the embrace. They both eagerly nodded at the proposal. And after all they've been through, well, this is the only time Showdown will admit that he smiled. Shut up. Showdown is not going soft. Only for his kid. 3 years later. Usually, Showdown does not listen to his Ash's radio program. He already has to deal with the blonde enough at work. But today is an exception. The reason is simple enough. Isuku is giving his first interview today. Present Mike has already called dibs on his first interview 3 years ago when Isuku was just starting his training. And now 2 weeks after the official debut of Pro Hero Duality, the time has finally come. Pro Hero. Showdown has felt pride before, even though he never admits it out loud. He is always proud of his students who succeed in graduating. But Isuku, his child, is a different case. The pride he feels in him is such that let's just say that Showdown has a copy of his hero's license framed and hanging on his bedroom wall, and also a copy of the article about his debut right next to it. Shut up, he's not soft. That's not the point. The point is that Izuku's first interview will start any moment now, and if Showdown is all set to record it, no one needs to know. Suddenly a song starts playing on the radio, indicating the beginning of the program, and a few seconds later Hasashi's clear voice begins to speak. Izuku is nervous. He's about to give an interview at Uncle Mike's program and he's almost panicking. They have already rehearsed what they are going to say. Just a few simple questions, kind of a way to introduce Izuku to the world. It doesn't mean that Izuku is any less nervous because of it. And Kuzu, the traitor, is simply in the back of their minds, laughing at Izuku's torment. All right, Izuku. Deep breaths, you can do it. It's just Uncle Mike. You will end up giving interviews to strangers. Better start practicing now. Truth be told, Izuku would love to be an underground hero like his father, but unfortunately for Project Vigilante to be approved, it was clearly stated by the Hero Commission that the participants needed to become limelight heroes. The best they could do in this situation was for Izuku to become a kind of hybrid hero. He will have a media presence, give interviews, and have his own merchandise like any other hero. But most of his personal information, as well as details about his quirk, will be kept secret by the commission. The fact that his deeds are public means that his secrets will not last long. But at least Kuzu likes the attention, so is Silver Line. Anyway, the starting song is about to finish. It's showtime. Showtime. He heard Kuzu speaking from the deep of his mind. Hey, listeners. This is your host, Present Mike. Welcome to our show. Put your hands up. Well, Uncle Mike is as animated as ever. This at least gets Izuku to calm down a little. And today, we have a special guest. Or should I say two? Why suspense? It's not like you haven't been announcing this interview all week, Uncle Mike, Kuzu said and had to hold back his laughter when Mike looked at him pouting. Well, I still need to do some suspense, little listener. This is how the show works, Uncle Mike replied, then smiled again. Anyway, why don't you greet our audience? Hello, everyone. Izuku was the first one to say. I'm the duality hero, Poltergeist. Hey listeners, Kuzu greeted, doing a Present Mike impression. This is your beloved duality hero, Ifrit. It's nice to be here, they said in unison. Sometimes it's funny how they can do two voices at the same time. That's right, listeners. Here we have pro hero, Duality, about to do their first ever interview. These young pro heroes debuted less than a month ago and already gathered quite a good fanbase. Between their quick thinking, skillful quirk usage, and a great balance and dynamic between the two of them, they already make civilians feel safety and admiration and villains feel fear. Good thing the interview is by radio because the right half of Izuku's face is already completely red from hearing the praises. Can we please go straight to the questions? Zuku whispered in embarrassment, but the studio microphone is so good that it surely picked up. All right, present Mike thankfully had mercy on his soul and picked a paper sheet where they had most of the questions written. We asked the listeners to send us the questions they would like answered. They sent in a lot, and our team selected the best ones. First question. Uncle Mike took a few seconds of suspense before continuing. You look younger than my grandson. How old are you, dear? He read the question exactly as it was sent. Zuku had to cover his mouth tightly to prevent Kuzu's laughter from escaping. After they calmed down, Zuku decided to answer first. We are both 13 at the moment. And yes, I know. Aren't you too young to be pro heroes? Kuzu made a mocking question. Yes, we are. But we wouldn't have been chosen as part of Project Vigilante if they didn't trust our abilities. Zuku explained. They had already decided in advance that they would open the game. After all, Project Vigilante was never a secret. On the contrary, with Izuku being the first participant and proving the success of the project, publicizing it so that it would reach other vigilantes would be the best thing to do. And if you think we are young now, imagine when you find out how old we started. 13 years old, and they already have 6 years of experience between vigilantism, training, and now professionally. That's almost half their lives, and they are just getting started. That's right. I may not have been your mentor during the project, but all of us in the UA have seen how skilled you are, Uncle Mike said before looking down at the paper again. Next question. When are you going to start releasing hero merch? Uncle Mike looked at Izuku and grinned. So, damn, people want our hero merch, Zuku said, scratching the back of his head. Of course they want. Kuzu replied before Mike could. Dad said already they would. Then he turned to Mike smiling. That depends, my dear listeners. But I'd like to say soon. God knows that this bonehead could use a little boost of confidence. Then he made a small next sign while patting his own head. Anyone who doesn't know them would find it a weird scene. But Mike is more than used to seeing Kuzu comforting Zuku. To him the scene is just plain cute. Alright, now let me see. He looked one more time at his papers and smiled. Got a good one here. Why do you two act under the same hero name? Also, will you reveal your true name? 2 questions in one. We got a greedy one here. Kuzu joked, answering the latter first. No, Zuku said simply. We want to keep our civilian and hero lives separate, just like Uncle Mike. No one knows who he really is. We know though, Kuzu said. Nephew privileges, Zuku cheered. And no, we aren't blood related. But Uncle Mike is completely our cool uncle. Then Zuku covered his ears as Uncle Mike let out a quirk-powered scream that caused a malfunction on his microphone. It looks like we are having a few technical problems here, so we'll be back right after a small break, Kuzu said, smirking. Stay tuned, listeners. We'll be right back. Okay, Kuzu makes a damn good mic impression. Showdown was never so grateful for being alone as he is right now. It's a good thing this interview happened on his day off, because if people saw the smile he had on his face right now, his image would be forever destroyed. I mean, everyone kinda knows how soft. Shut up. He's not soft. You can't prove anything. Anyway, each question he heard Izuku answering made him feel prouder, as much as he always knew Kuzu would be able to handle it just fine. He was a little worried for Zuku. The kid is so shy that it's hard for him to talk to anyone his own age. His only friend, at the moment, is Kuzu, which is slightly worrying, but Showdown trusts his son. Still, Showdown is more than sure that his kid will have all the media wrapped on his finger in less than a month. It's impossible to resist his kid's charm, just like the entire police department wasn't able to. The public certainly won't. If he didn't wear a mask, a single smile caught on camera would be enough, but Izuku wanted to keep his true identity a secret, mostly because he didn't want people to make the connection between him and Showdown, since revealing Showdown's identity could be compromising to the underground hero. Showdown, of course, was more worried about his kid's safety than his own, so he completely agreed with keeping it a secret. They don't hide that they are father and son, but no one needs to know they are both heroes. Oh, the music is back. Looks like the break is over. Back to the interview. Alright, listeners. Sorry for the delay, Uncle Mike said after his microphone was changed. But now, let's continue. The show must go on. Alright, where are we? Zuku asked. You answered the second half of this question. Let's recap, Uncle Mike said. Then read the question again. Why do you two act under the same hero name? Also, will you reveal your true name? Well, as we said, we won't be revealing our true name anytime soon. Zuku recapitulated his earlier answer. As for the first question, well, it's kinda simple, Kuzu continued, but we won't answer that today. he said laughing. Now, before you start booing me, there's a good reason for the secret. It wasn't even supposed to be a secret, Zuko protested. I thought it was obvious. It would be if our information weren't classified, Kuzu replied. But yeah, it's not a secret, but since no one knows. Kuzu took up a paper from somewhere and started looking through it. It's so much funnier to read your theories. This one we will eventually tell the public, Zuko said. But I don't have the heart to stop Ifrit when he loves reading your theories that much. Oh, come on, Poltergeist. They are incredible. The ones about our identities are amazing. Like, look at this one, Kuzu said, looking at the paper. Endeavor's secret love child. He barely finished his reading before bursting into laughter. Like, the writer had a few good arguments, but mostly it was, they both have powerful fire quirks, so they must be related. Kuzu kept trying to control his laughter. Can you believe that? With all due disrespect, if I were Endeavor's son I would go crazy. Okay, you made your point, Ifrit, Zuko said, calming Kuzu down. But I have to agree, Endeavor sucks. Anyway, there's some really good theories over there, some more accurate than others, Kuzu continued. There are some people who have come very close to getting it right. And if someone does get it right, I commit myself to come back here and read that person's theory live. People will hold you on that promise, Ifrit, Zuko deadpanned. Well, listeners, our time is almost up, but we have time for one more question, so let's get to it. Then Uncle Mike looked at his papers one more time and looked up to Izuku smiling. What could you say to the quirkless? Are people over with weak or villainous quirks? Villainous? Zuko asked, tilting his head to the side. That's the biggest bull beep that I've ever heard before. What would a villainous quirk be? A quirk is only a tool. How you use it is what says if you are a hero or villain. Look at me, Kuzu said right after. People say fire is a heroic quirk, but they forget that I could burn down the entire city if I wanted. As for weak or quirkless, believe me, I know what you passed. Zuko continued. I was a late bloomer, and I have the extra toe joint, which is another load of bull beep should I add, so everyone thought I was quirkless. I might have a quirk now, but I felt firsthand what quirkless kids feel. So let me say one thing. You're not less or more than anyone else because of your quirk. It might seem like the world is against you now, but remember there are good people too. These are the ones you should focus on. And if you ever need help, remember these numbers. Then Zuko passed 3 different phone numbers. They were 3 and go. As focused on helping people who suffers with quirk discrimination. I wish I knew about them before. And remember, quirkists everywhere. Discrimination is a crime. And you can run away all you want, but one day you will have to face the consequences. Kuzu added. Well, looks like this is it, Uncle Mike said after closing the question. Thank you for coming, little listener. I hope we can do it again. Of course, Uncle Mike. You'll always have priority over my schedule, Kuzu said, grinning. That's right, Zuko said right after. I will admit, I was nervous, but this was much more fun than I thought it would be. Before we close, anything else to add? Mike asked again. For all the dreamers out there, Zuko said, never let anyone tell you that you can't do it. It doesn't matter if your dream is to be a hero, a doctor, a teacher, a janitor, or a pizza parlor night watchman. You can do it. Pizza parlor night watchman? That was oddly specific, Kuzu teased, but I couldn't have said it better myself. You can do it. You heard them, listeners, Uncle Mike said, then activated his quirk. You can do it. Thankfully, the new microphone was prepared for the sudden raise of volume, so this one didn't break. See you all on our next program. Same time, same frequency. With that, Uncle Mike started playing another music indicating the end of the program. The cherry on top of his day was when he got home later that day and found his Aizawa cooking katsudon for dinner. 1 year later, it was their day off. No patrols, no villains, just them, their father, their cats, curled up in front of the TV, watching whatever was playing. Lazy days like that always were their favorites. But then, how did he end up having to spend the afternoon running after a damn villain made of sludge? The short answer, All Might is a moron. Oh, you want the long explanation? Okay, sit down, here comes the story. As already said, it was Isuku and his dad's day off. They spent most of their day curled on their sofa with their cat's bastard. And Pablo, since they didn't have to patrol that night, Aizawa had just expelled his whole class. But it was starting to get late, so Dad went to start dinner and asked Isuku to go to the mall to get some things they were missing at home. Isuku promptly accepted and went. So far so good. But then, he had to take a shortcut through a tunnel. That's when everything started to go wrong. Starting when he heard a voice saying, "A medium-sized vessel." The voice immediately caught Izuku's attention, and when he turned around, he saw some kind of slime thing crawling towards him. "You'll make the perfect skin suit for me to hide in, kid." Well, great. Just on his day off too. Izuku, unfazed by the villain's sidestep when the sludge tried to catch him. "Leave this one to me," Zuko said, raising his arm and making a grabbing motion. The villain stopped moving and their exposed eyes widened. "You know, there are few things that I really hate," Kuzu started saying, while Zuko compressed the villain. Being bothered on my day off is definitely one of them. Saying that, Kuzu opened his mouth and shot a fire burst on the villain, who screamed in pain. Even if he is immune to physical damage, fire is hot. I said, leave to me, Kuzu, Zuku said, pouting. Then he took a bottle from his grocery bag and emptied it. Damn, what a waste. Now, be a good villain and enter the bottle, he said, shoving the villain inside the bottle. Great. Now we'll need to go to the police station. Kuzu sighed. Hopefully, Tsuka-san will be there. We don't have our suit, Zuku replied. At least we brought the license, Kuzu said. Imagine the Heta. Have no fear, you are safe, a voice said from the other side of the tunnel. Now that I am. Then he stopped when he saw just a kid there. I'm sure I heard a screaming from there. Probably from this guy, Kuzu said, showing the bottle. This, whatever he is, tried to attack me, said something about using me as a skin suit. I see. I've been searching for this villain for some time already. Thank you for the help, kid, All Might replied, taking the bottle and putting it in his pocket. It seems like it will fall any second now. I'll bring him to the police station. Saying that, All Might turned around and prepared to jump, which no doubt will end up with him dropping the bottle. Wait, All Might, Zuku tried to call him. Sorry, kid, I can't give you an autograph right now, I have to go, he said, then jumped up. Isuku could see the exact moment that the bottle fell down from his pocket, and the giant buffin continued without noticing it. Great, just great, Kuzu said angrily. What an imbecile. I can't believe he used to be our favorite hero, Zuku said facepalming. Then he took his phone and dialed his dad's number. Problem child. Their dad answered rather quickly. Did something happen? Hi dad. We are fine, but we'll be a little late, Zuku replied. What happened? Aizawa asked and Zuku sighed. Well, some kind of swamp villain attacked us, Zuku explained. We are fine. He didn't lay a finger on us, and we trapped him in a bottle. Then all morons showed up and took the villain, saying he would bring him to the police. Kuzu continued. The imbecile jumped out, dropped the bottle, and probably still didn't notice it. So now we need to find the villain. This is why I hate that buffoon, their dad replied. Be careful. Don't worry. We'll call you if we need backup. Probably it won't be necessary, but it's always good to be prepared. All right, kid. See you soon, Aizawa said, then hung up. One problem solved. Now where is the villain? If I were a giant mud ball trying to hide, where would I go? Kuzu asked. He said he wanted to use us as a skin suit. He probably will try to find another kid, Zuku said. Where would we find many kids? They thought for a few seconds, then it clicked. Aldera, they said in unison. All right, let's run, Kuzu said. It's better if we fly, Zuku replied. They don't have their hero suit, but thankfully, they always carry their mask with them. That, combined with the hoodie they are wearing, will, hopefully, be enough to hide their identity if they have to engage. So they fly at max speed in the direction of Aldera Junior High. But on the way, they hear the sound of an explosion. An extremely familiar explosion, despite being about 9 years since he last heard it. Fuck. Why is this happening to him? Katsuki is about to die suffocated by a fucking pile of sludge. Where the hell did this damn villain come from? What's all this about a skin suit? And why aren't any heroes doing anything to help him? He saw at least 3 heroes coming before the villain blocked his vision as well. Why doesn't anyone do anything? Why don't his explosions affect this damn villain? Katsuki has never faced someone he couldn't defeat with his explosions. What is this feeling of helplessness? He hates that feeling. Was this how Deku felt all the time? Fuck, why is he thinking about the nerd at a time like this? It's been almost 10 years since he disappeared. At least 7 since the Bakugas saw about his death on the news. The nerd died in a fire. Was it the flames, or did he suffocate from the smoke? Strange to think that he is about to die of suffocation too. Fuck, Katsuki can't die like this. He still needs to become a hero. He has to surpass All Might and become the #1 hero. He already broke his promise with Isuku once. The two of them can no longer become heroes together, and it's all his fault. When Katsuki heard about Izuku's death, he promised that he would become a hero for him too. He can't break this promise too, but it's getting harder and harder to hold on. How long has this pile of mud been suffocating Katsuki? It can't be more than a few seconds, minutes at most. But he feels like hours have passed. His explosions are weakening. The outside sound is getting lower. Fuck, no. If he loses consciousness now, he will be dead without a doubt. Suddenly, he feels as if something is holding him by the shoulders, and then he is being pulled from inside the villain. As suddenly as it started, he feels air again and starts coughing, desperately trying to pull in as much air as possible while trying to expel the sludge that has no doubt entered his lungs. For the next few minutes, Katsuki is not quite sure what happened. He briefly remembers seeing a skull mask, blue eyes, and a mop of dark green hair. Very familiar hair, but it can't be. He is dead. Still, unconsciously, Katsuki raises an arm toward the figure. I.cu. The last thing Katsuki sees before passing out is the mysterious figure turning around and looking at him wide-eyed. To say that Isuku is furious would be an understatement. The moment he heard the explosions, extremely familiar explosions, he flew at full speed to see what it was all about. Imagine his surprise when he saw the scene in front of him. There were so many things going wrong there. First, the slime villain holding a child hostage, trying to invade his body by entering through his mouth and nose. And the child, Katsuki Bakugo, Kaken. It has been almost 10 years since Isuku has seen him. If only it were under better circumstances. Second, 3 heroes watching the scene doing nothing, because, and I quote, "We don't have the right quirk to deal with this villain." How can they call themselves heroes and stand by and watch a child die? And no sign of All Might. It's not possible that he's such an idiot that he hasn't noticed that the villain has escaped yet, right? Whatever the reason, the symbol of peace has not yet arrived. Well, if these heroes won't do their job, then Isuku will have to do it for them. Without bothering to ask them to make way, Zuko immediately jumps in front of them, putting on his mask on the way, and extends both arms, focusing on Katsuki, who is struggling less and less. The moment he locates the blonde, he makes a pulling motion with his full force, yanking Katsuki out of the villain's grasp and holding him in his arms. Then Zuko holds the villain and compresses him, the same way he did earlier, and puts him into another bottle. Second bottle wasted. The villain only has the moment to widen his eyes in surprise. He can't even speak a word. Looking around, Zuko sees a burning building, probably the result of Katsuki's explosions. Backdraft, another hero present, had been trying to put out the fire since Isuku arrived. Strange priorities, since Katsuki was still letting off explosions uncontrollably the whole time. Anything the hero put out soon burned again because of that, but at least he was trying to do something. The same couldn't be said for Kamui Woods, Mountain Lady, and Death Arms. Sighing, Zuko raised his arms again and started gathering the fire on the buildings, compressing them into a small fireball and holding it in his right hand. Then he quickly swallowed it like a pill and went to check on Katsuki. The kid was coughing and desperately trying to gather any air possible. Putting his hand gently on his chest, Zuko tries to feel inside his lungs, and there's no doubt he has sludge there. Looking around, the others were still just watching, so Zuko sighs again and passes control to Kuzu. He is better at this. At least he can show anger. Do I really need to do everything here? Can someone call a goddamn ambulance before this child dies? Kuzu said angrily, practically growling at the other heroes. It does the work. The heroes start moving around to call the rescue. He has sludge in the lungs, so tell them to hurry up. And of course, the press, which simply does not know the meaning of bad timing, chooses just now to try to interview Isuku. Poltergeist, can you make a statement? A journalist shoves a microphone in his face. Kuzu simply pushes the microphone back, glaring at the cameras. I can't, I'm too busy doing their work, he says, pointing at the other heroes, who at least have the decency to look embarrassed. Then, making sure that the ambulance is on its way, Isuku goes to the heroes, making sure to send them a glare that would make his father proud, and starts lecturing them. The scene is honestly comical. 4 adults staring at the ground while a child scolds them, and they look terrified. What saves them from an hour-long lecture is the voice Isuku hears coming from behind him. I.cu. Isuku was the only one who heard, being used to picking up low voices even in the middle of crowds. He turns around, looking at Katsuki on the ground with wide eyes. There's no way Katsuki recognized him, right? But he has his arm extended towards Isuku. Is that a coincidence? Then the arm goes limp and Katsuki closes his eyes. Izuku's confusion immediately turns to concern and he practically throws himself on his knees in front of his former childhood friend. No. Come on, don't pass out now. The rescue is almost here. You're going to be okay. Izuku tries to say but has no answer. He presses his ear to Katsuki's chest, and at least his heart is still beating. He also hears a wheezing sound coming from his lungs. Where is the damn ambulance? Almost like an invocation. He hears the sirens approaching, and unlike the heroes, at least the doctors are fast and efficient. In a matter of a few minutes, Katsuki is in the ambulance and being taken straight to the hospital where he can be treated. After all this, Izuku goes home, mentally exhausted after this roller coaster of emotions. And to think that all this happened because the imbecile named All Might is incapable of guarding a bottle properly. Frankly, Isuku even forgot why he had come out in the first place. In the midst of the chaos, he ended up losing all the groceries he had bought. What a waste. His father listened attentively and patiently while Isuku explained in detail everything that had happened. And in the end, they decided to order a pizza because frankly it was already too late to cook. And they would have to go to the grocery store again for that. One thing Isuku knows now. Katsuki is fine and stronger than ever. He will probably go to UA. After all, being a hero has always been his dream. The biggest problem is that he will find out that Isuku is alive. Izuku is already dreading the conversation they will have. The blonde will certainly be angry. Izuku only hopes that he has matured at least a little in these 9 years, because he doesn't want a new scar for his collection. But Izuku is no longer the quirkless Deku. He is a pro hero now. In an all-out fight he is even able to match his father. Not to mention that the staff of UA will not stand idly by if something happens. Director Nedzu's anti-bullying policy is unforgiving. If Katsuki tries anything, he won't get away with it. The exams are 9 months away. Isuku wonders what kind of class will come this time. He just hopes his father doesn't expel everyone again. Although this time Nedzu has contingencies in place to prevent this. On the day of the exam, Isuku arrived early with his father. They went soon to the staff room so everyone could be prepared to do their jobs. What? You thought Isuku would be taking the exam? No, they won't. Isuku has technically already graduated, so from this year on, they will act as teaching assistant in Eraserhead's homeroom. Technically, they were supposed to start last year, but a certain someone expelled his whole class, so there were no classes for Isuku to assist. As for the exam, Isuku has 2 functions. The first, like the other teachers, is to keep an eye on the participants to distribute rescue points during the practical part. The second is to look out for promising students who don't have the right quirks for the test, thus making this biased test a little fairer. Unfortunately, they can only choose one person to pass this way, so they have to make sure they make the right choice, especially since the chosen one will be taking someone else's spot. The responsibility is great, but everyone agrees that Isuku can handle it, and they wouldn't have agreed if they didn't think they could too. The participants look relatively promising this year. Some of them already draw attention, good or bad, mostly good, though. The amazing part is how many quirks Isuku can see and analyze in a single day. Obviously, the ones with mutations draw the most attention, like the boy with the crow's head, or the one with engines on his legs, clearly a relative of Ingenium. But the floating uniform, invisibility, draws just as much attention. On the other hand, there is also a short boy, somehow smaller even than Isuku himself, with hair that looks like a grape bunch. This one drew attention for all the wrong reasons. He doesn't seem to be taking the tests even a little bit seriously. And all the time, Isuku could see him trying to make conversation with the girls. And they all seem to get extremely uncomfortable as soon as he starts talking. This one is a great candidate to be removed in Aizawa's purge if he gets in. But who knows? And of course, another one that draws attention is the boy with purple hair that defies the laws of gravity, combined with dark circles under his eyes that could give Eraserheads a run for his money. If Isuku didn't know better, he would think this kid is his dad's secret love child. Having most of the students' files in hand, Isuku quickly looks for the ones they need to keep an eye on, and what a nice surprise, the purple-haired one has a mental quirk. Isuku will watch this one closely. On the written test, there is not much to comment on. Isuku takes this test every year for fun, and frankly, it's too easy. If it were up to Nedzu, the test would be much longer and more difficult, but it seems that some students would not agree with him, especially those who are literally shedding tears on the paper. Well, this is UA. If they are despairing just because of that, they aren't suited for this school. After the written test, Isuku makes a point of appearing in the auditorium where Uncle Mike is explaining how the practical test will be. They stand at the room entrance watching and have to hold back from answering when everyone ignores Uncle's asking for a cheer, mainly because they didn't want to call attention to themselves. He doesn't want a certain Katsuki noticing him there at the moment. Apparently, they were not discreet enough. Is this the famous UA entrance exam? This is too easy. It's like the test was made for Katsuki. The written test was child's play. Will the practical test be that easy too? Probably. Katsuki is the best, after all. He quickly locates his assigned chair in the auditorium and sits down, waiting for whoever will explain how the test will work. UA exams are always a secret. Everyone who takes the test must sign a non-disclosure contract, so no one knows how it works. It doesn't take long for a pro hero to appear and explain the test. Or not, because it's present Mike. And he obviously will act as a radio host even there. Everybody say hey. No one replied. Geez, tough crowd. From there, present Mike began to explain how the exam would work. Something that can be summed up as smash as many robots as you can before time runs out. The robots have different values, but this is not important to Katsuki. It's not like he's going to be searching. Any robot that appears in front of him can already be considered junk. But it seems that some don't agree with him, as a four-eyed blue-haired extra decided to interrupt the explanation to accuse the O of making a mistake. This error would be explained in less than 30 seconds if the idiot would just let the hero finish the explanation. Katsuki turned to him with every intention of telling him to go to hell, but he ended up saying nothing, because in his peripheral vision, he saw someone else, specifically, someone who wears a black cloak covering his entire body and a skull mask concealing his face. Poltergeist. Katsuki will never forget him. It was he who saved Katsuki from the Sludge villain. But that's not why Katsuki remembers him. Don't get him wrong, Katsuki is grateful to have been saved from the villain. As much as he hates to admit it, he would have died if the hero hadn't arrived on time. But no, the reason Katsuki remembers him so clearly is the incredibly familiar green hair he saw that day. When he woke up in the hospital, Katsuki thought he imagined it, but he saw the reports. The whole thing turned out to be recorded, so Katsuki has no doubt about his hair color. The media went crazy. After all, nobody knows anything about the hero's duality except that they are both 14 years old, probably 15 now. Katsuki, for a moment, even considered the possibility, but there was no way. The nerd was quirkless. Plus, he had green eyes. Poltergeist has blue eyes and Ifrit yellow. And Ko had a type of telekinesis quirk. And Hisashi breathed fire. It has to be a coincidence. Isuku is dead, no matter how much Katsuki wants to believe he isn't. Katsuki only realized that he was staring at Hiro when they accidentally made eye contact. Katsuki looked back at the auditorium immediately, blushing. No one will ever make Katsuki admit it, but he has been a Poltergeist fan since before he was saved by him. He has a poster of the hero in his room, and he's also one of the people who created theories about why two heroes share the same hero ranking and the same name. His main theory is that of the twins. The two have a similar body structure. Before the incident with the Sludge villain, no one had seen Poltergeist without the cloak, but Katsuki saw him up close. The body structure of the two is identical. They must be identical twins. When people start to leave the room, Katsuki realizes that he has missed all the rest of the explanation. Fuck. Well, he knows enough already. Destroy the robots, get points. It's enough to know that. But Katsuki is not there to pass. He is aiming for first place. While the participants are split up and guided to their buses and then off to their respective test blocks, accompanied by Present Mike, Isuku goes to the judging area. When they arrive, all the teachers are already waiting. So Isuku sits down next to his dad, who's drinking his 13th cup of coffee of the day. Dad, you remember the rule. No more than 17 coffees, Kuzu said, reaching for the bottle and pouring him a cup of coffee as well. I still don't know how you two like this bitter stuff, Zuku said, glaring at the cup in their hands. Blacker than a moonless night, Kuzu started saying. Hotter and more bitter than hell itself, Shouda continued. That is coffee. They finished together, then made a toast and downed their drink. You guys are impossible, Zuku sighed. Anyway, has anyone caught your eye? No one yet, Shouda replied, but no surprises there. His dad is really hard to impress. What about you? A few, Zuku replied, opening his notebook. But let's see how they fare against the robots. Then he looked at Nedzu. Anyway, how many 0-pointers do we have this year? One for each area, Nedzu replied. Then I'll make a bet, Kuzu said, looking at the list of names assigned to each area. At least one of the 0-pointers will be destroyed. I would say that 2 others might be deactivated but not destroyed. Interesting, Nedzu said with a glint in his eyes. And which ones do you have in mind? Katsuki Bakugo will no doubt destroy the one in his area, Zuku said. Hagakure Toru. She can get close to it without being noticed. It will be easy for her if she figures out the trick to deactivate it. It will all depend on whether she will try it or not. And the other one? Nedzu asked. Shinsu Itoshi. Zuku and Kuzu said together, then Zuku went on. This is more of a hunch than anything else, but that one gave me a good impression. And not just because he looks like a younger version of Dad. He smirked at his dad, who just rolled his eyes and ruffled his hair. I will keep an eye on him. But if you want, my bet. 0 villain points, between 30 and 40 rescue points. 50 if he tries to face the 0-pointer. Kuzu said. Very well, Nedzu said, looking at his screen. The students are ready to start. With that, everyone focused on the multiple screens. It's showtime. Kuzu grinned. Bloody hell. Could this test be more biased towards physical quirks? Destroy robots. Hitoshi's quirk is brainwashing. In a test like that, he is basically quirkless. The test already started more than 15 minutes ago, and he has not scored a single point yet. Maybe he would have scored something if he hadn't wasted his few chances trying to help imbeciles with no sense of self-preservation in the way of other robots. Why did he waste time doing this? Who knows? He moved before he realized it. The point is, he will never get into the hero course that way. Damn, this is his only chance to prove that he is not a villain just because of his quirk. In the back of his mind, he remembers the words he heard on the radio a year ago. Never let anyone tell you that you can't do it. You can do it. Never let anyone tell me that I can't do it. These words became his mantra since he heard them, even if they weren't directed to him. Duality became a hero when he was just 13. Eraserhead is Hitoshi's favorite hero, but the hero duo is a close second place. I can do it, Hitoshi said to himself again before running after another robot. Then he heard a tremor that gave him a horrible feeling. What now? 60 points already. Katsuki is having a blast with this test. It's like it was literally made for him. Looks like the robots are attracted by sound. To each one Katsuki destroyed, 2 others appeared. Katsuki had just scored another 3 points when he heard a loud thud on the floor. Then another one, and another one, rhythmically, like steps. When he looked, he saw a giant robot walking in his direction. Everyone immediately started running away from it. Cowards, Katsuki simply grinned. A kaiju robot, he yelled, starting to run after the robot. Now we're talking. He was about to use an explosion to blast himself towards the robot's face when he heard a voice calling. A little help here, someone. When he looked, he saw a redhead with shark-like teeth trapped under some rubble. Katsuki remembers seeing him a few times during the test. He was punching the robots and was hit a few times but didn't even feel anything. Hardening, it is a possibility. If that is the case, he should be fine. Better ignore him and go after the Titan robot. But just as he took the first step, a voice in the back of his mind stopped him. An infuriatingly familiar voice. If someone needs help, isn't it a hero's job to help? Kaken, looking one more time at the robot. Then gritting his teeth, Katsuki ran towards the redhead and kneeled in front of him. Oi, shiny hair, what's your quirk? He asked to confirm his suspicion. Shiny hair, we have practically the same haircut. The redhead protested. My quirk is hardening. I can harden any part of my body. Then do it. I'll blow this rebel. And protect your eyes, Katsuki replied, putting his hands on the rubble covering him. When he saw the redhead covering his eyes, he activated his explosions and blasted all the rubble away. The redhead then tried to get up. It seems he's okay. Thanks, bro. This was so manly. The redhead grinned at him. Katsuki was about to tell the shiny hair to go die when they heard the giant robot again. And he was too close for comfort. Fuck, Katsuki cursed. Then he had an idea. Throw me. What? Shiny hair asked. Are you fucking deaf? Katsuki asked. Throw me at the fucking robot. I'll blow him to pieces. Are you sure? Shiny hair asked again. We have no fucking time. Just fucking throw me. This seemed to do the job. Shiny hair grabbed Katsuki and threw him against the robot with all his strength, which was a bit more than Katsuki expected. Maybe his hardening also gave him a lesser strength augment. Anyway, Katsuki flew against the robot, using his explosions to correct his trajectory. He saw the giant 0P painted in the robot carcass and grinned. Opus, I'll show you who is Opus. He stopped above the robot's head and aimed his strongest explosion down. The result was instantaneous. The robot's head could not withstand the explosion and was completely destroyed, and the rest of the robot collapsed under its own weight. It seems that this one also only had size. The moment Katsuki returned to the ground, he heard a signal. The test is over. Now, how many points was the Titan worth again? Isn't that thing a bit too much plus ultra? A giant Titan robot. Really? And this thing is worth 0 points? This school has too much money. Nope. There's no way Hitoshi will be facing this thing. No fucking way. He was just turning around to flee with the others when he heard someone calling. Help. No, stop Hitoshi. This is the UA. There's no way they will really let anyone in danger. Just run. He didn't run. Before he could think logically, he started running in the direction he heard the scream. And he quickly saw it. A girl trapped under a pile of rubble. She has a broken leg, at the very least. Hitoshi ran to her and started trying to lift the rubble to help her. He managed to raise it just enough for the girl to crawl from under it. But by the time he did, the kaiju robot was already too close. Got him it. Hold on. Hitoshi yelled and started running towards the robot, who noticed him and aimed a punch at him. Hitoshi jumped to the side, avoiding the punch, but the shockwave made him lose balance. He looked at the giant fist buried in the floor. This thing could have smashed him. But then he shook his head, jumped on the fist, and started running up on the robot's arm towards its head. He stopped on its shoulder. All right, I hope this thing is as dumb as it looks, he said to himself. Then brought 2 fingers to his mouth and whistled as loud as he could while patting the robot's head with his other hand. The robot noticed and tried to punch him again. Looks like it is, Hitoshi said, grinning, then jumped down from the robot. The fist collided with the robot's head, smashing it. The impact also made the robot lose its balance and fall back. Looks like his plan worked. Hitoshi just had the time to smile for a second before realizing something. He's falling down to the floor. Fast. He didn't plan for this part. Great, forget about being a hero. He's about to die. Hitoshi closed his eyes, waiting for the impact, but then he felt a hand pressed against his chest and the impact never came. When he opened his eyes, he saw the girl with her hand outstretched towards him, and he was floating. Looks like she saved him. She opened her mouth to say something, but then they heard a signal. The test is over. Sighing, Hitoshi felt his weight coming back and fell down to the floor. He looked back to the 0-pointer on the floor. Great, the only robot he has defeated. And it's the one that is worthless. Hitoshi just wants to go home and take a nap, if possible, for the rest of his life. Meanwhile, in the judging area, everyone was open-mouthed by what they had just witnessed. All except 3 people, or 2 people and a rat. Shouta simply watched in his ordinary expression. But Isuku saw the moment when he lifted the corners of his mouth for a single second. Nedzu was laughing maniacally, and Isuku had an ear-to-ear grin on his face. Isuku exchanged a look with his father, and both of them nodded. Nedzu-san, Isuku started. It doesn't matter how. I want him in 1A. It's here. The UA. letter just arrived, and Hitoshi is already trembling. It was by pure luck that he found it before anyone else in his foster home. If one of the other kids had seen it, they would have either hidden it, read it, or destroyed it before Hitoshi could even know it had arrived. Even worse if his foster parents had found it. They think Hitoshi only applied for Gen Ed. If they knew that Hitoshi tried the hero course, just thinking about the punishment makes Hitoshi shiver. But now, the letter is in his hands. Hitoshi is sure he failed the hero test. He hadn't scored a single point on the entire physical test, but at least he hopes he got a good enough score in the written test to get a place in Gen Ed. Running to his room before anyone else could see him, Hitoshi locked the door. Technically, this room isn't just his, but the other kid is never home at this time, so it's no problem. Not wanting to delay the inevitable any longer, Hitoshi tore open the envelope with a little more force than necessary. From inside it fell a metal disc. It looks like some kind of transmission device. Did everyone who took the exam get one of these? Really, the UA has too much money. Examining the disc, Hitoshi found and pressed a button on the right side. And then a hologram began to be transmitted. I am here as a projection. The phrase screamed All Might, but the person saying it was not All Might. Damn, how can he say something like that with a straight face? Hitoshi's mouth was practically on the floor. But how could it not be? The one in the projection is a child, apparently the same age as Hitoshi. Most of his face is covered by a skull mask, leaving only his yellow eyes exposed, and wearing a simple red hoodie. There is no way for Hitoshi not to recognize him. This is Ifrit. The question is, why is a projection of Ifrit in the UA? Letter, why is a projection of Ifrit in the UA? Letter, Ifrit mimicked Hitoshi's thoughts. What a great question, Shinsu-kun. It is, another voice asked. Then the projection cut exactly half of Ifrit's body. Then the right side of the image started showing another kid. This one had a skull mask exactly like Ifrit's, but he was wearing a back cloak covering his entire body. Nice to meet you, Shinsu-kun, he said, though we aren't meeting yet. It's more lie. Anyway, answering the question before this one starts muttering. Ifrit cut. As you probably know, we are the duality hero. I'm Ifrit, and I'm Poltergeist. Poltergeist said, and we are here for 2 reasons. First reason, starting this year, we will act as an assistant teacher in Class 1A. The two keep completing each other's sentences. Is this a rehearsed speech? It's like they know exactly what the other is thinking. Maybe they really are twins. Second reason, to give your exam results. So without further ado, Ifrit cleaned his throat. Shinsu Hitoshi, in the written test, you passed with a score of 87, which puts you between the top 10 of the exams. Congratulations. 87. That's so much higher than Hitoshi thought he could get. Now, as for the practical test, Poltergeist continued, and Hitoshi's expression instantly fell. He knows he failed completely. You scored 0 villain points. This isn't enough to pass the test. Is he mocking Hitoshi? It's obviously not enough. It's a 0. But being a hero is not just about defeating villains. And what kind of hero school would you be if we didn't take that into consideration? Let's take a look at some interesting images we got during the test. Ifrit said, smirking, then they disappeared. The projection showed an image of Hitoshi shoving another kid out of the way of a 3-pointer attack. Then another one, this time Hitoshi helping another one escape from under a building that almost collapsed. The images continued showing all the people that Hitoshi helped during the exam. The last image showed Hitoshi fighting the 0-pointer. Over the years, several students have passed the entrance test. The number of people who have faced and beaten the 0-pointers is smaller than expected, but still a considerable number. But no one has ever done it with such creativity, Poltergeist explained. And to do this to save someone you don't even know. We can say that it certainly moves people. Ifrit continued. Then another clip appeared. This time it was the girl that Hitoshi helped. She was talking to Present Mike. Excuse me, sir, she said. You know the kid with purple hair? The one that seems to urgently need to get some sleep? Is it that obvious? Hitoshi touched the dark circles under his eyes, suddenly slightly self-conscious. Insomnia is a bitch. Can I share some of my points with him? He saved my life. The clip cut down before Mike could reply. There's no reason to show the rest. The answer to her question is obvious, Ifrit said. But that's not the point. You saved her. Your actions moved her. What kind of hero school would you be if we didn't reward this kind of action? Poltergeist said. This is why there's a secret part for the test. Rescue points, they said together. Your bravery and your actions, Shinsu Hitoshi, got you a total of 50 rescue points, Ifrit announced. We had a program here, made for helping the kids with mental quirks. Poltergeist continued. We would choose a kid and they would become part of the class until the sports festival. If they could prove themselves in the festival, he would keep in the hero course. If not, they would be transferred to Gen Ed. We thought about you, Ifrit said, but you proved you didn't need our help. You passed this extremely biased test. Please don't tell anyone I said that, with your own strength. Poltergeist continued. You proved to the world you can do it. I'm sure you'll be a great hero, Shinsu-kun, Ifrit said. and I look forward to working with you one day. Having said that, welcome, Shinsu Hitoshi, they said together, extending their hands, to your Hero Academia. Then the projection stopped. He did it. Hitoshi really did it. He got in the hero course. He'll be a hero. He'll prove to everyone his quirk does not make him a villain. I'll be a hero, Hitoshi said to himself, not managing to hold his tears anymore. I can do it. The first day at UA came faster than anyone could have guessed. Isuku was the first to arrive. On the first day, his dad always likes to be in the class before anyone else, and Isuku will be damned if he loses the chance to see it. Eraserhead is the champion in causing first impressions. Not that Isuku is much different. After all, they are not waiting outside the room or sitting at their desk or near the blackboard. The place they chose to wait was literally upside down, sitting on the ceiling. Why? Simple. They want to see how many students will notice them there. And also because there is the best view of the cocoon in which their father is sleeping. The first one to arrive is Katsuki, and he doesn't disappoint Isuku in the slightest. It only takes him 5 seconds to look up and see Isuku hanging on the ceiling. Isuku simply brings a finger to their mouth, a silent request for his silence. Whatever, Katsuki mumbles before going to his desk and sitting down, then putting his feet up on the desk. The second one arrives only 5 minutes later, and it's the Lita kid. This one doesn't notice Isuku. Instead, he goes straight to Katsuki's desk and starts scolding him for putting his feet on the desk. Something about it being disrespectful to the one who made the desk and the heroes who used it before him. Frankly, he's too loud, and Isuku toned him down after the first sentence. The students start arriving one after the other, but to Izuku's disappointment, most don't see them up there. The only exceptions are Todoroki Showdown and Shinsu Hitoshi, but both of them send alarms in Izuku's head. Before entering, they both scan the entire room, mapping everything and everyone. Their eyes linger for a second in each possible escape route, and only after that they enter and go to their desks. These aren't good signs. It's something Isuku will have to bring to his dad later. But he really hopes he's wrong. 2 abused kids, one of them being the son of the number 2 hero. This will be a problem. None of them brings much attention to Isuku. When they see him, Isuku makes the same signal he did to Katsuki. Todoroki simply nodded when he saw it. Shinsu's eyes widened for a second, but he nodded too and went to his desk, right in front of Katsuki. Small talk soon began between the students. In less than 10 minutes, groups started forming. The exception being again, Todoroki Showdown and Shinsu Hitoshi. Another bad sign. Todoroki practically closes himself in a box, so no one tries to approach him. Shinsu said in dry words he wasn't there to make friends the moment the girl who he saved in the entrance exam tried to talk to him. Another thing to remember later. As soon as the clock strikes 8:30, the show begins. If you're here to make friends, I suggest leaving now, Showdown starts saying. Half of the class looked horrified when they saw the yellow caterpillar getting up. The other half went to their desks and sat down. It took 8 seconds for you to notice me there and quiet down. You're too illogical. Showdown looks up for a second, seeing Isuku trying hard to hold his laugh. Showdown hides a smile in his scarf before continuing. I'm Aizawa Showdown, and I'll be your homeroom teacher. Now, he throws a pile of uniforms on his desk and starts going to the door. Put these on and follow me. I won't wait. Whoever takes more than 10 minutes will have detention. Then he leaves. The kids look awestruck by what just happened. Most of them don't make a move. But, as funny as the situation is, Isuku will try to save them from having to face Eraserhead's fury right on the first day. So he drops down from the ceiling right in front of the blackboard, then says, he's serious. Aizawa is one of the strictest teachers you will ever meet, and he does not make empty threats. This seems to do the magic. Most of them instantly recover from the shock and rushes for the door. Smiling to himself, Isuku enters one of the vents in the room and goes straight to the gym. He arrives practically at the same time as his dad. None of the students is there yet. You know the drill, right? Showdown asked them. Of course, Dad, Zuku said, smiling. They won't reveal Izuku's name, nor his secret yet. They will say it after the test, so only the survivors will know. The mask stays until anyone we need to expel is expelled. You seem sure someone will be expelled, Showdown replied. Though, I have no doubt. You'll see, Zuku said. Anyway, you'll use the logical ruse card. Only if needed, Showdown replied. And something tells me I will. How many noticed you? Only 3, Zuku said. Bakugo Katsuki, Todoroki Showdown, and Shinsu Hitoshi. I'll need to talk to you about the last 2 later. I'm worried about some signs. Worried as in abuse, Zuku supplied. They showed a bit too many signals already. Alright, we'll talk later. Anything else? Bakugo Katsuki. I'll probably need to talk to him after today, Zuku said, rubbing his temple. He's Kaken, you know. Do I need to be worried? Showdown asked, looking him in the eyes. Hopefully not, Zuku said. Kuzu will be there, and I'm not helpless. But hopefully he won't attack me. If he does, he'll be expelled, Showdown said in a dry tone. Even if he doesn't like you, he'll have to respect you. You are his teacher now. Duly noted. Zuku smiled. And I can't expect anyone to respect me if I don't respect myself. That's my boy, Shouder replied, pulling him into a hug that was rudely interrupted when they heard someone cooing near them. When they looked, they saw a pink girl with horns, a redhead with shark-like teeth, and another blonde boy with a black lightning bolt pattern in his hair. The three of them smirking at the scene. Zuku and Shouda slowly walked away and tried to recover from their embarrassment. Good thing Izuku's mask doesn't let them see how red he is. Even better, Shouda can be intimidating even in such a situation. With his eyes glowing red and his hair floating. One word and you will have detention for the rest of the semester. All three gulped and nodded. Soon the rest of the students arrived, and Shouda began to give his usual test, the quirk assessment test. The goal is simple, to see where the students are in terms of power, control, and creativity with their quirks, and also to filter out those who clearly do not have any potential. This test is surprisingly effective. Everything was going very well, until some idiot dared to say the word fun in Shouda's presence. They dug their own grave. Fun? Do you think you are here to have fun in the next 3 years? Then let's raise the stakes a bit. Whoever finishes last will be considered without potential and immediately expelled. It looks like the logical ruse card will be used now. Well, they deserved it. We have worked so hard to get here. You can't kick us out on the first day. That's not fair. Okay, they need to shut up. Now, Kuzu, a little help here. Zuku mumbled, then felt Kuzu smiling. I'm on it. Adjusting his cloak so the hood would cast a shadow on his right eye, Zuku passed half his control to Kuzu, who started talking. Fair. Everyone turned to him. Tell me, is life fair? He took off his right glove and raised his hand so everyone could see his scarred hand. Are villain attacks fair? Accidents? Natural disasters? No, they aren't fair. But even so, it's a hero's job to save people from them. This is UA. Shouda continued. The teachers here have the freedom to conduct their classes as they see fit. In the next 3 years you'll have to prove time after time you all have what it takes to be a hero. And to do this, you've had to overcome challenges no matter how unfair they may be. That is the motto of the school. Go beyond, plus ultra, Kuzu said, then smirked under his mask. They're all yours now, Zuku, he whispered, then gave the control back to Zuku. So, if you want to stay there, prove to us you have what it takes to, Zuku said, then nodded to his dad. Well said, Shouda nodded. Now, let's start. Yes, Aizawa-sensei, the class echoed. Good, at least they learn fast. Fortunately, the test went smoothly. Most students excel in at least one of the tests, the exceptions being Shinsu and Mainta. Shinsu proves to be average in all tests. He does not excel in any test, but he doesn't come last in any of them either. If he were using his quirk, he could easily be first in all tests, but he seems afraid to do it. And then we have Mainta. This one definitely thinks that Shouda is bluffing. He's not putting any effort into any of the tests, coming last in most of them. Not to mention his attitude towards the girls in the room who are clearly uncomfortable and avoiding him. Seeing how hard Shouda is holding his clipboard, it is obvious that he is at his limit not to stop the exercise and expel the bunch of grapes with legs now. Izuku is not much different. Fortunately, it doesn't take long to get to the last test, the bowl toss. The last one is Shinsu, and Shouda seems to have noticed the same as Izuku because he makes sure to emphasize his words again. As long as you don't leave the circle, anything goes. Izuku also decides to give him a little help, making sure to stay in Shinsu's field of vision. When their eyes meet, Zuku nods slightly and Shinsu's eyes widen. Are you sure? He asked Zuku. Absolutely, Zuku replied, and instantly he felt his conscience slipping. How interesting. It's the same feeling as when he passes control to Kuzu. And how to watch from the passenger's seat while someone else is driving it. Use your quirk and throw this ball as far as you can without hurting yourself. Then his body started moving. It would be a disconcerting feeling if Zuku were not already used to it. As stupid as the prejudice is, he can see why idiots would be afraid of this quirk. Zuku, however, knows that there is no reason to be afraid. Entering the circle and receiving the ball, Zuku soon begins to act. Shinsu is smart. He doesn't know the poltergeist techniques, so the command was throw as far as you can, meaning the effectiveness of the throw depends only on Zuku. And well, throwing hard is not exactly difficult when your telekinesis can easily lift almost 30 times your own weight. Zuku and Kuzu have taken this test several times. It is one of the ways that Shouda uses to keep track of Izuku's progress, both of the physical and quirk. He has done several tests of ways to throw this ball, and the best way he has managed so far is the simplest of all. Float the ball and throw it as hard as he can. It sounds simple, and indeed it is, but effective. The 1273M on Shouda's device attests to this. The second highest score in the room, second only to Uraraka and her Infinity. After this, Shinsu immediately releases Izuku from the brainwashing. This is the kind of creativity we are searching for, Zuku said, grinning at Shinsu. And that's it, Showdown said after the tests are over. I can't be bothered to announce it, so see for yourselves. He turns his screen to the students and shows the results. Iarazu Momo, Todoroki Showdown, Bakugo Katsuki, Lita Tenya, Takoyami Fumikage, Shaoji Mezu, Ajiro Mashurao, Kirishima Ijiru, Ashido Mina, Shinsu Itoshi, Uraraka Ochako, Kuda, Sadu, Asui Tsuyu, Aoyama Yuuka, Kaminari Denki, Shiro Hanta, Jiru Kyoyuka, Hagakure Toru, Maita Minoru. After showing the results, Isuku and Showdown exchanged a glance and a nod. Having said that, Showdown sent the students a glare that could make All Might shiver. Maita Minoru, go to the principal's office. You are expelled. What? You can't do that. The grape kid starts whining. I can't be expelled. I didn't even get to touch any boobs yet. You have 5 minutes to go to the principal's office. I won't repeat myself, Showdown repeated, this time activating his quirk for extra intimidation. Why me? Maita tried again. Why not the kid with the villain's quirk? What is he even doing there? Okay, that does it. It's not usual for Kuzu to simply barge in. But since Zuku can't feel anger, Kuzu always knows when he should feel angry for both. Zu, on it, raising his right hand. A chain slips from under Zuku's cloak sleeve and wraps Maita, effectively trapping him. Now, listen to me. Kuzu starts. You are being expelled for 3 reasons. Number 1. You didn't show any intention of taking this test seriously. I know when someone is not even trying. Aizawa knows too. Number 2. In less than a single day, you sexually harassed every single girl in this class. So be grateful we aren't calling the police, because we have proof. And number 3. Quirk discrimination will not be tolerated here. So this is your last chance. You can go to the principal's office, or I can drag you there. With each word, Kuzu took a step closer to the grape kid, letting all the venom drip in his voice. Maita looked, rightfully, terrified, which was exactly what Kuzu was aiming for. And why should I listen to you? Who are you? But apparently not enough to cut the talk. What do you mean? Who am I? Kuzu asked angrily. Didn't the acceptance letter say? He shot a look to the rest of the class, who looked completely confused, except for Shinsu. Really, All Might was supposed to have introduced me in the letter. He sighed. Just one more mess with All Moron. Doesn't this guy have a single brain cell? Looks like he forgot. Showdown sighed, then leveled the class with another quirked glare. This is the duality hero, Poltergeist. Ifrit and I will be assistant teachers in class 1. Zuko explained as he unwrapped the chains from Maita's body and turned to look at the class. And while I am just an assistant, I have Nedzu's full permission to expel someone if I find it necessary. So remember. But before Zuko could finish, he was hit in the face by something sticky, and he immediately tried to pry off his face. And surprise, it's one of Maita's hairballs. And that it's with Izuku's mask stuck on, which means everyone can see his face. Fuck, Zuko hears Kuzu saying in the back of his mind. But he's so in shock that he doesn't even scold Kuzu for his language. Diku. And Katsuki recognized him. Just great. Silence, Showdown said in his most angry voice, already trapping Maita in his capture scarf. All of you, go back to the classroom and wait for me. Poltergeist will be watching. If anyone starts crowding, they will be immediately expelled. Understood? Yes, Aizawa-sensei. The class replied in unison. Then he left, dragging Maita in his capture scarf. Probably to Nedzu's office. Originally, he would just be transferred to Gen Ed and have a chance to return to hero class if he did well in the sports festival. But after what he just did, he will be lucky if he is accepted in any other hero school on this continent. Bakugo-kun, wait here for a moment. The rest, to the changing room and then straight to class, Zuko said, trying to hide his trembling voice. Just great. Izuku wanted to, at least, be the one to take off his own mask. The plan was to introduce himself at the end of the class, not like this. Izuku just can't catch a break. At least it isn't a serial killer this time. Showdown was furious. By now, this is practically his second nature. Showdown's moods can be resumed to either tired or furious. But still, he has a good reason. He just had to drag Maita to Nedzu's office after the grape boy literally attacked Isuku. And to make it better, he also ended up making Isuku lose their mask. So now, they'll have to explain it to the entire class. Yes, this was the plan from the beginning. But still, it would be in Izuku's time. They wanted to reveal themselves, not be unmasked. Showdown knows the reason. It's called Bakugo Katsuki. Izuku wanted to tell the kid on his own because Zuko thinks he owes it to Bakugo for never having reached out to say he was alive. It's honestly stupid. Izuku doesn't own anything to anyone, even more since Showdown knows Katsuki wasn't Zuko's friend. He was his bully. But Zuko never saw it like this. His kid can be pretty dumb at times. He can only hope that Izuku can handle it for now. But it doesn't look like that's the case. Showdown could feel the tension from outside the classroom. Sighing, he opened the door and took in the scene. The students were talking quietly among themselves while occasionally glancing at the front of the room or Bakugo's desk. Bakugo, who up to now had not shut up about anything, was quiet in his seat and promptly ignoring the stares. And finally, sitting at Shouda's desk, was Isuku with their head down and their eyes unfocused and their lips moving silently. Shouda would be alarmed if he hadn't seen this happen before. Because of the different way that Izuku's mind works, disassociation works differently for them. Technically, any time one of the two is asleep is a form of disassociation. As long as the two do not disassociate at the same time, the other can bring him back to reality. The moving lips indicate that they are talking. Can someone explain to me what is going on? Shouda asked, entering the room. After you left, Poltergeist asked Bakugo to wait a bit. They spoke for less than 10 minutes. When they got to the room, Poltergeist said to just wait for you. Lita explained, then pointed to Izuku. He's been like that since we got here. It seems like the talk didn't go well. Will he have to expel Bakugo? Izuku, Shouda called and put a hand on his son's shoulder. Then yellow eyes instantly focused back and turned to look back at Shouda. Are you okay? I can deal with this if you want. Nah, we can handle it, Kuzu replied, and Shouda saw him signing something. Zu is not really fine. Expect a breakdown when we get home, Shouda nodded. Then got up. All right, Hellspawn. Yes, I'm calling you that from now on. Pay attention because we'll just explain this once. Shouda started. And remember, you all signed a non-disclosure agreement. Well, let's do it then. Kuzu started, but then stopped and looked up for a second. Everyone followed his eyes, but there was nothing. Are you sure, Zu? All right. When he looked back at the students, he had a blue and a yellow eye. It looks like Zuku wants to participate. Well, we are Aizawa Izuku. They started saying, Pro Heroes, Ifrit and Poltergeist. The class kept silent for about 5 seconds before the chaos started. Everyone is trying to ask questions at the same time. We, Aizawa, Ifrit and Poltergeist. What? Shouda sighed and flared his quirk, silencing the class. Now, one at a time. Questions, Shouda said, and several hands were raised. Just remember he's not obliged to answer. Then he nodded to Izuku. All right, first. Izuku looked at the raised hands and pointed to the pink girl, probably because it was the first one he remembered the name. Ashido-san, are you and Aizawa-sensei related? That's easy enough to respond to. Are we, Dad? Kuzu, the little shit, looked at Shouda, smirking. We are. Shouda waved him off. Yep, this grumpy is our Denzawa. Kuzu continued, pulling Shouda in a side hug. And we love him. Shouda buried his blushing face in his scarf, but didn't try to escape the hug. Next, this time Zuku called. He easily pointed to the Infinity Girl. Uraraka-san, did your eyes change color? I'm sure they were both blue. She asked shyly. Well, this will probably be the answer to a few questions in one. Kuzu said, like, why do you have 2 hero names? And why do you refer to yourself as we? The answer is simple. Zuku continued raising both his hands. On the left hand, he started moving the chains, and on the right, he created a fireball. We are both Ifrit and Poltergeist. As for the why, Izuku closed his eyes, and when he opened them, they were both blue. The fire in his right hand died. You can call me Zuku. Zuku smiled sweetly at the students. I am Poltergeist. Then he closed his eyes again, and this time they were both yellow when he opened. And I am Kuzu. Ifrit. Kuzu grinned at the confused students. Has anyone here ever heard of dissociative identity disorder? Zuku asked, and this time a few raised their hands, less than half the class. Well, you should read a bit more. Kuzu chided. Basically, we have 2 personalities living in the same body. We call ourselves Zuku and Kuzu, and our quirk is a dual quirk. Zuku continued, fire creation and telekinesis. But I can only use telekinesis, and Kuzu can only use fire creation. Hence the distinction in our hero personas. Other questions? Kuzu asked again. Takoyami-kun, are you like Dark Shadow then? Not quite. Kuzu put a hand on his chin. I'm sure our quirk had something to do with our separation, but I'm not a sentient quirk. What a mad banquet of darkness. Takoyami sat down again. Anyone else? This time, only one hand was raised. Kaminari-kun. Then, who is the real Izuku? Kaminari asked awkwardly. Okay, first, I know it wasn't the intention, but rude. Zuku said. Second, there's not a real Izuku. We are the 2 sides of Aizawa Izuku's personality. Both are Izuku. Anyone else? When no one raised their hands, Zuku continued. Great, if you have questions, you can come to me. There are some things I won't answer, obviously, but I consider myself quite an open person. And remember, yellow is me. Blue is Zuku. Kuzu said. Dad can tell us apart just by expression and body language. But for others, it's just a look in the eye. And if you want to talk to the other, just call out. And please, don't call us Aizawa. We don't need to make this confusing, Zuku said, then turned to his dad. It seems that our time is up. I'll go ahead. Then he left the room at the exact moment the bell rang. All right, I'll see you tomorrow, don't be late. Shouda addressed the students, then went after his son. As Katsuki watched Izuku leaving the room, a single thought passed by his head. He fucked up. Katsuki spent many years thinking about what he did to Isuku. Yes, he was just a brat. But this is not an excuse. After the nerd disappeared, Katsuki became even more volatile. The anger was uncontrollable, and every day it only got worse, until the day he hurt, really hurt, one of his classmates. The details don't matter. The important thing is that someone almost died because of him. Less than a week after the incident, the news reported a fire and a death. That day, Katsuki saw Izuku's face in the obituary. The Bakugas were practically the only ones in the funeral. Even Hisashi didn't show up at his own son's funeral, but Katsuki always knew he was a piece of shit. The funeral was held with the coffin closed. Katsuki heard his mother comment that the body was unrecognizable. As he watched the funeral, Katsuki made a promise. He promised in front of the lapstone that he would be better, that he would learn to control his anger, and that he would become a real hero, the best hero in the world. And then, 9 years later, he learns that Isuku never died. Instead, he's the world's youngest pro-hero, has a mental disorder, a new last name, and a quirk. When he saw the nerd, the feelings became overwhelming. It was his chance to say what he wanted before, to say he was sorry for betraying him. But instead, Katsuki did what he always did when his emotions got too much. He got angry, and when he's angry, he loses his filter. He said things he didn't mean, and he hurt Isuku again. After everyone left for the locker room, only Katsuki and Poltergeist remained in the gym. Katsuki barely registered them leaving. The only thing in his mind was one question. Is this really Isuku? Poltergeist started, but Katsuki cut him. Are you really Izuku? He asked, not sure of what he wanted to hear. Yes, Kaken. And this answer didn't leave any room to doubt. Only the nerd would call him Kaken. I am. And this should be good news. Isuku is alive. God knows how many times Katsuki wished he could see him again, to say the words he never said. This was his chance to say it. Just 2 words. But when he looked at that smile, that hopeful face, only old memories resurfaced. And with them, old habits came back. What he said couldn't be further from the I'm sorry he wanted to say. You're useless, Deku. And later, even Katsuki would be surprised by the amount of venom in his words. Why was he so angry? Shouldn't he be happy? Kak hearing his old nickname only made him angrier for some reason. Shut up. Don't call me that. And then, Katsuki started bombarding him with his words without letting him respond. You died. And then, 9 years later, you simply come back like nothing ever happened. Been playing the hero since then. What kind of joke is that? How a useless, quirkless Deku like you even did that? And with each word, the smile in Izuku's face fell. Slowly, the hopeful expression in his face disappeared. Why aren't you dead? When Katsuki had to stop to breathe, Isuku finally said something. I guess it was too much to expect that you would stop hating me just because I have a quirk now. When he looked up, Katsuki saw a single tear falling from his blue eyes. But I never thought you really wanted me dead. Why fuck? This isn't what he meant. He doesn't want Izuku dead. But when he tried to reply, to his surprise, the sadness in Izuku's face changed to anger, and his blue eyes became yellow. It was like looking at a completely different person. Go back to the class, Bakugo. Even his tone changed. What just happened? Katsuki wanted to say something, to ask what happened to him. But he froze when he looked at those eyes. Eyes filled with anger. It was an expression he never expected to see in this face, especially not directed at him. So he simply nodded and turned to walk to the changing room. He could hear Izuku mumbling something to himself. At least he didn't attack us. It's a win, right? He heard a tear-strained voice asking. He attacked you. Not physically, but he attacked. The angry voice replied. I was better than we expected, but still. Katsuki left the question of why Izuku was talking to himself for later. Instead, what stuck in his head the moment was another thing. He thought Katsuki would attack him. Izuku was expecting to be hurt, and he wasn't wrong. Katsuki hurt him, just not the same way Izuku was expecting. And the worst part is that Katsuki can't blame him for thinking like that. He never gave Izuku any reason to expect something else from him. And now, after everyone has left, Katsuki can't help but wonder if he'll ever have another chance. Izuku is Aizawa-sensei's son. Katsuki could easily be expelled for what he said today. And he couldn't even say he didn't deserve it. He fucked up completely. To Zuku's credit, he managed to keep himself together and seemed fine until they got home. They heard a purring as soon as they entered the apartment. When they looked, they saw Pablo, their white cat. They found him about 2 years ago, or more specifically, Zuku found him during one of his patrols. No one wanted him, the main reason being his face. Pablo was one serious case of animal cruelty. Someone sliced the corners of his mouth, and thanks to that, his face looks like he always has a Cheshire cat smile on it. Add this to the ears that look almost like horns and eyes that always seem to be judging you, and you have possibly the scariest cat in existence. And Pablo also has the power to back up his scariness. He's one of the rare animals with a quirk. Zuku learned this the hard way. When he met the cat, he was wary of everything and everyone. When Zuku tried to approach it, he felt a headache similar to when he overused his quirk. It took weeks of leaving food for the cat until Zuku gained his trust enough to approach him without being attacked. Pablo's quirk was named Aneurysm, a mental quirk activated by eye contact. The cat can make the target feel severe headaches, and if held too long, it can even cause a stroke. Guess no one needs to mention how dangerous this quirk is. But even with all this, for Showdown and Isuku, this cat is simply the sweetest thing they know, and they will fight anyone who says otherwise. "Hey, sweetie," Zuku said, kneeling next to the cat, who instantly jumped on his arms and started rubbing his head against Zuku's face. "I'm fine now, don't worry." "No, Zu, you aren't," Kuzu interrupted him. "Will you tell me what happened?" Dad asked. "Will you keep calm?" Zuku asked back. Zuku knows that his dad will be angry when he hears what happened, but he doesn't want him to expel Katsuki. Was the blonde cruel with his words? Yes, he was. Did he hurt Zuku? Not physically, but he did. But Katsuki has much more than a powerful quirk. He has the potential to be a great hero. And he'll never have the chance to do it if his dad expels him because of this single event. I'll try to. And it's the most he'll get from Aizawa. Still, Zuku will try. So, as calmly as he can, Zuku explains what happened after his dad left. He even manages not to start crying when he says the words that hurt so much to hear. He said what? But clearly, the words bothered his dad. For all the talk of acting logically, Aizawa is always the first to lose his cool when something affects Isuku. It's usually something sweet to see, but Zuku wanted it to be different at this particular moment. He said, "Why aren't you dead?" Not helping Kuzu, among other things. He's so expelled, Dad said, already pulling his phone, probably to call Netsu, but Zuku held his wrist before he could. "Stop, Dad, please," Zuku said, already crying. "Zuku, I said he would be expelled if he tried anything." Dad replied, "You said you would expel him if he attacked us." "He didn't," Zuku argued. "Physically not. But he still hurt you, Zuku. Verbal abuse is as bad as physical abuse." Dad said back, "We can't just let this go." "Zu, stop, please," Kuzu interrupted. "He doesn't deserve your forgiveness. Not if he doesn't apologize." "I know, but please, Zu. He already hurt you too much. He's not your friend. You don't owe him anything, kid." Zuku knows it. Deep down, he knows it. The memories of when Izuku and Katsuki were 4 years old and attached by the hip are just that, memories. Logically, he knows that the only reason he doesn't resent the blonde is that he is incapable of feeling anger. After all, Kuzu clearly resents him. But at this point, it is precisely because he is incapable of feeling anger that Zuku knows he can be logical. Yes, he doesn't owe Katsuki anything. If he hates Izuku, it's a shame, but Zuku will survive without his childhood friend. However, that doesn't mean that Zuku will let all his chances be destroyed because of this. Reluctantly, Zuku let go of his dad's wrist, but he didn't give up. "Please, Dad. I know you saw his potential. Just give him a chance to change." Zuku argued again. "You don't need to forgive him. Neither you nor Kuzu need to. You don't need to let this slide. You can give him another form of punishment, like detention. You can make him have counseling with Inui-san." His dad pondered for a few seconds, really pondered. Then he looked at him with a serious expression. At this moment, this wasn't his dad. This was Eraserhead. "Why?" he asked. "Why should I give him a chance?" "Because if you don't, no one will," Zuku replied in an equally serious tone. "I know what he did. I am not forgetting, nor just forgiving. But I know if someone can help him be better, it's you, Dad." "Kuzu," Eraserhead asked. "I don't want to forgive him. He hurt Zu too much," Kuzu said, then sighed. "But Zu is not wrong either. If we just expel him, he'll never learn to be better. He could be a great hero with the right guidance." And at that, Eraserhead sighed. Then his expression softened as he put a hand on Izuku's head and ruffled their hair. "You too. I'm proud of you," Dad said, smiling at them. "I'll give him a chance, but it'll be his last." "Thank you, Dad," Zuku said, hugging him. "He'll need to follow a few rules if he wants to stay." Dad continued. "First one is, he'll treat you with respect. If I hear him calling you Deku again, he's out. I'll be giving him a week of detention. And he'll have mandatory counseling with Hound Dog." "Let me talk to him too," Kuzu said. "I have something to say." "Fine, but I'll be close this time," Dad replied. "That's fine by me," Kuzu grinned. "I just want to talk to him, as much as I'm sure he deserves. I won't let you kill him." "Nah, don't worry, Dad," Kuzu replied. "It's not like I'm trying to sneak Pablo into the school." "Please don't," Zuku pleaded, and the cat purred at the same time. "You know Pablo won't hesitate to kill someone if we ask. You remember what happened when that thief tried to invade? I remember how it took Dad 2 hours to notice we had an unconscious man in our living room." Kuzu teased. "I had just returned from my patrol and hadn't had my nap yet." Dad defended. "Aren't you the one who is always talking about situational awareness?" On another note, Dad tried to change the subject, but the red ears were obvious. "Tomorrow will be the first heroics class." "Great. A full class with all moron," Kuzu replied. "I can't wait to be ignored the entire day." All Might is a good person and a great hero, but he has one fatal flaw. The imbecile always thinks he knows everything, and as a result, he ignores everyone's opinion. In class tomorrow, Isuku won't be surprised if he completely ignores the script and puts the students in some dangerous situation like battles with quirks before any training or safety instruction. Did Majima-san say something about our new costume? Isuku asked. He said it will be ready by tomorrow. Dad replied. He also said he finished most of your support gear. Finally, I can't believe we've been doing this for more than a year and just now the commission approved our costume. Kuzu huffed. Honestly, one would think after getting a license you would get better gear than when we were a vigilante, but better late than never, I guess. Isuku shrugged. Anyway, I'm exhausted and we don't have to patrol today, so I'll go to sleep. Don't stay up too late, Kuzu. Then less than 5 minutes later, Kuzu felt Isuku sleeping in their mind. Kuzu almost followed him up, but then he felt his phone vibrating. He got a new message, and he knew exactly from whom. Burning down the house, are you free? Crazy, not crazy, maybe. Is it important? Burning down the house, would I be messaging you if it wasn't? Crazy, not crazy, fair enough. Same place as always. Burning down the house, I'll be there in 20 minutes. Also, prepare for a donation. She's hungry. Crazy, not crazy, okay. Dad, Kuzu called, and Shadow looked at him. I'm going out for a while. I need to meet my adult problem. Be careful, Dad replied, handing him a pot of burn ointment. Great, so he knows exactly who Kuzu is talking about. I'll be, Kuzu chirped, already moving for the door, picking his coat, then putting on his red shoes. These shoes, to this day, are still something that never fails to sour his mood. As someone who has been quirkless, Isuku knows better than anyone what they mean. It's pretty simple. Quirkless people have an extra joint in their pinky toe, so normal shoes don't fit them comfortably. Quirkless people are about 20% of the population, but something that isn't usually considered is that this number has been dropping with each generation. That is to say, in fact, 20% of the world's population is quirkless, but most of these people are in the elder groups. If we think only of those under 30, this percentage would be something like 2% of the population. Making shoes for such a small group is certainly not very profitable, so most companies don't even consider it. In fact, only one company manufactures the so-called primordial shoes in all of Japan, and that is not the problem. The problem is that the company owner is basically a quirkiest of the worst possible strain. His motive for making the primordial shoes is not at all noble. All the primordial shoes are made in the same bright red model, so that anyone on the street can identify someone quirkless just by looking at their feet. And since no other company even considers making shoes for the quirkless, it's either that or go barefoot, which would be just as obvious even if it were a good idea. The purpose is obvious. It would be easier to make all quirkless people walk around with a sign on their chest or something. Isuku may be a false positive, but they still have the extra joint. Yes, Majima-sen would be more than happy to make shoes adapted for him if they asked. He made boots for his costume, after all. But he doesn't do that. On the contrary, Isuku makes a point of continuing to wear primordial shoes, simply to prove a point. Isuku is not the first false positive to exist, nor will he be the last. They are rare, but they still exist. This whole thing about the extra joint is completely outdated nonsense. It is much more superstition than anything else. Practically anyone with some kind of bird mutation has the joint. It is a natural part of their anatomy. One of Izuku's biggest battles is to make everyone aware of this fact. This is why they are entirely open about being a false positive. That is why they always wear primordial shoes. But that doesn't mean they like them. Hell, if Isuku earned a coin every time someone twisted their nose at them or crossed the street after looking down and seeing red shoes, Isuku could retire and buy a mansion in the best city in Japan. This is, of course, ignoring the less discreet, who said words that should not be repeated. But now is not the time to think about that. Kuzu needs to go out to meet a friend. Then about 20 minutes after leaving the house, Kuzu finds himself in a dark alley, the usual place. Looking around, there was still no one there, so Kuzu simply decided to wait. And he doesn't have to wait long before he hears a sound and turns around just in time to catch, between two fingers, a knife flying towards his face. "Oh, I thought I got you." A female voice, too animated, said, "You're no fun, Ku-chan." "Hi to you too, Himi-chan." Kuzu sighed, already opening his arms to the blonde girl that instantly tackled him into a hug. Animated as always, a deeper voice called, and a dark-haired male entered the alley after the girl. "Dabi, how is my favorite arsonist doing?" Kuzu chirped, injecting as much sarcasm in his words as he could. It had to be Ifrit. Dabi mumbled, "Where's your brother?" "Sleeping," Kuzu replied, tapping his head with his index finger. "Long day." Then he turned to the blonde girl. "And I heard you were hungry. It's been 3 days already," she said. "All right, not criticizing," Kuzu replied, starting to pull off his jacket. Then he turned his back to the girl. "Try not to cause a mess, please. I like this shirt. And watch out for the artery." The girl instantly perked up and buried her teeth into Kuzu's neck. It stung a bit, but he's more than used to that. With that, he addressed Dabi. "So, what did you need to say?" he asked. "Well, I thought you should know, since you're working at UA. Now," Dabi said while pulling a cigar, and Kuzu held a flaming finger for him. "There's this new group calling themselves the League of Villains that's been recruiting thugs everywhere." "Thugs?" Kuzu asked, raising an eyebrow. "Anyone with any kind of criminal past, from a pickpocket to a murderer," Dabi explained. "They tried to approach me and Toga." Himiko called, then sank her teeth back into Kuzu's neck. "Himiko," Dabi sighed. "Their leader wants to kill All Might, and since All Might works at UA, now they have an opportunity to attack, and potential hostages to use." Kuzu said. "Well, this is amazing. The thugs are probably cannon fodder," Dabi continued. "But their leader seemed really confident they'll succeed." Thinking about All Might's condition, Kuzu couldn't not be worried. Could these villains be aware of his weakened form? But how could they? "If you're telling me this, I suppose you didn't accept his offer," Kuzu replied. "Of course not," Dabi said, indignant. "I want to kill Endeavor, not All Might. And you don't want to attack your little brother's class." Kuzu smirked at him. "Shut up, brat," Dabi muttered. "Have you considered my offer?" Kuzu asked again. "I did, and just like I said last time, it's impossible," Dabi replied. "I'm not even a vigilante, Ifrit." "You are," Kuzu replied. "You use your quirk to attack other villains. This makes you a vigilante." "Still impossible, for now," Kuzu sighed. "It's slow work, Dabi, but we are getting close. Endeavor will fall, and then, I promise you, I'll bring you back to your family." "I wish I could trust you, Ifrit," Dabi said sorrowfully. "I really wish. But this is Endeavor we are talking about." "True, but even Endeavor can't outsmart Nenzu," Kuzu replied. "So please, don't give up yet. As long as you don't go full villain, I can bring you into the Project Vigilante. The same goes to you, Himi-chan. So just avoid murder, and stay low." "All right, I'll trust you for now," Dabi said, then pulled an envelope from his coat. "And here is the information you asked last week. He's really hard to find. If he wasn't, he would have been caught already," Kuzu replied. "But there's only so much a vigilante-turned-villain can do to stay hidden, especially if they keep acting." "Thank you, Taoya. Don't mention," Dabi replied, smiling slightly. "Hey, Himiko, you'll suck him dry." "That's what she said." Kuzu giggled. "How mature," Dabi said, as Himiko let go of Kuzu's neck. "Thank you," Himiko said as she helped Kuzu put a bandage on the place she had just bitten. "No problem," Kuzu said. "Now, I need to go home before Dad gets too worried." "Oh, Dabi, this is from Dad." He gave Dabi the burn ointment. "I can attest to its efficiency." "Let's see," Dabi replied. "Sleep well, brat. I'll contact you if I learn anything new. Bye, Ku-chan. Say hi to Zuzu for me." Himiko chirped, and then they both left. Well, this honestly went much better than Kuzu expected. It seems like Dabi is really opening to them. And Kuzu will be damned if he betrays this trust. One way or another, Endeavor will fall. The second day at UA started almost like the first. Itoshi arrived at the classroom 15 minutes before homeroom started, and, by force of habit, scanned the entire room before entering. It's always been like that for him. The only difference from the first day was that Poltergeist wasn't sitting at the ceiling this time, and Bakugo wasn't in the room yet. Whatever, he doesn't care, so he just goes to his desk, sits down, and proceeds to nap until homeroom starts. 5 minutes before homeroom begins, Bakugo enters the room, wearing an expression stuck between annoyed and fearful. Interesting. He goes straight to his desk and sits down without another word. He doesn't even yell when the redhead with shark teeth tries to talk with him. Then, soon after that, Isuku enters the room. Itoshi takes a second to look in his eyes, trying to see which one is that. Yellow eyes, so this must be Kuzu, right? Unlike yesterday, today, he was not wearing his hero costume. Instead, he was wearing a UA uniform like any other student would. That is, if you ignore the tie that appears to have been tied by a right-handed person who has two left hands. Life can be funny at times. Eraserhead has always been Hitoshi's favorite hero and still is, but Duality easily takes second place, mainly because of his involvement in anti-discrimination campaigns. After finding out about the NGOs they talked about on the radio program, Hitoshi went after them. And what did he find out? Apparently, Ifrit and Poltergeist constantly donate 80% of everything they earn to these NGOs focused on fighting discrimination and openly take a stand against any kind of prejudice, be it against mutation quirks, villainous or quirkless. It didn't take long for the duo to become the second best hero, in his opinion. And now, their favorite heroes have become their teachers. Frankly, few things are more incredible. Scanning the room, Kuzu grinned at Hitoshi for a second, then sat down at Aizawa's desk. Just like yesterday, Aizawa-sensei seems to immediately teleport to the room's door the moment the signal rings. This time, the room immediately falls silent and watches him. 5 seconds, that's better. Aizawa-sensei nods at the class, which almost bursts into cheers, but a single glare with glowing eyes and floating hair silences them. From there, an incredibly normal day follows up. Homeroom with Aizawa, mathematics with ectoplasm, science with Snipe, then lunch. After that, it's study hall, again with Aizawa. And then it's time for fundamentals of heroics. Before the class started, most of the students were theorizing about who would teach this subject. Isuku looked like they wanted to be dead, which obviously meant it wouldn't be Aizawa. So who could it be? I am here. Oh, there's no mistaking this voice. Coming through the door, each word made Isuku look like he was sinking more in his chair. Seems like All Might isn't his favorite teacher. Like a normal person. The day I see a normal person walk through the door like this will be the day I know that humanity is beyond salvation. Kuzu mumbled to himself, and Hitoshi had to hold his snickering. As All Might started introducing himself, Izuku looked about to start headbanging his desk, especially when All Might introduced their costumes. No hero is a real hero without his hero costume, he announced with a dramatic tone, and clicking a button on a remote, drawers popped out of the wall with a hiss, numbered cases coming out along with them. Well, Hitoshi understands where he's coming from. But isn't Sir Night-Eye's hero costume basically a formal suit? A costume might be important, but he makes it sound like it's the most important thing. Well, at least the class is excited to see their costumes. Hitoshi is excited too. He can't deny it. And for some reason, All Might had an extra case in his hands. Young Aizawa. He called Izuku. I said to call me. Izuku sighed again. He's doing that a lot today. Forget. He waves a hand. Power Loader said to give this to you. He passed the case to Izuku. Finally, Izuku replied, smiling. Now, if I'm not wrong, our class today will be at Gym Gamma. Not quite, young Aizawa, All Might said, and Izuku's smile instantly dropped. We'll be going to Ground Beta. And Izuku visibly scowled at that. Ground Beta. What are you planning, All Might? Kuzu asked, gritting his teeth. We'll be doing combat training. All Might said like it should be obvious. On the first day, without any prior training, Kuzu asked in his most deadpan expression. At least tell me it will be quirkless training. What would be the point? All Might asked, tilting his head to the side. Kuzu took a long deep breath then started talking slowly. The point, All Might, is to not let 19 super powerful teens freely use their quirks against each other without any previous training and how to do it safely. Kuzu replied, experience is the best teacher, young Aizawa. Don't worry. All Might waved off his concerns. You know what? I give up, Kuzu said, then turned to the class. Suit up and follow him, I'll be back soon. Then he left. Where is he going? Kaminari asked. But the question everyone had at this moment was another. Will we really be okay? But of course, it had to be all moron. What kind of idiot thinks such a lesson plan is a good idea? Izuku watched Aizawa's quirk assessment test firsthand. He analyzed each of the students. Apart from 2, no one there has any kind of adequate training to be doing combat training. Most of them probably can't even understand how dangerous their quirks really are. Today it should just be a review, test, and critique of the costumes. Dad is already at Gym Gamma waiting, after all. That's where they should be going. With his costume case in hand, Zuku decided that, to hell with it, and simply rose from the ground flying at full speed toward the Gym Gamma. Bad day to have forgotten his phone. He almost crashes against the door in his hurry. Dad, he's already yelling, which startles Shouda, who barely keeps himself from jumping. Izuku would be laughing in any other situation, but now they have a disaster to prevent. Zuku, what happened? Dad asked worriedly. All moron happened, Zuku replied. He changed the schedule. The class isn't coming here. Where are they going? Dad asked hesitantly. Ground Beta, Zuku replied. He wants to do combat training. Combat training? Zuku could practically see his dad's soul leaving his body. Damn it, what is he thinking? I have been working here for 2 days and I already want to ask for a raise. Taking care of an almost 50-year-old child was not in the job description. Zuku face-palmed. Anyway, we need to run. Because there's no way this won't end with broken bones, at the very least. Can I carry you? It will be the fastest way. Dad nodded. Then Zuku carefully lifted his dad and took flight again, full speed towards Ground Beta. When they arrived, only All Might was there, which means the students must be changing. At least no, they didn't start yet. It looks like we're just in time. Go put on your costume. I'll take care of the imbecile, Dad said, then Zuku nodded. He entered the changing room just in time to hear his father kicking the door open. Dramatic as always. The sound of the kick must have been louder than expected because the moment Izuku enters the changing room, everyone looks between him and the door with expressions caught between surprise, confusion, and fear. Aizawa is having a little conversation with All Might. No need to worry, Zuku said with a sweet smile that soon became a mischievous smirk when his eyes turned yellow. Actually, I'll bring a batch of cookies for whoever records the conversation and sends me the video afterwards, Kuzu said as he passed through the boys to start putting on his costume. Most of the boys had already changed and were just waiting for the rest. Isuku almost stopped for a moment to look at their clothes but decided to leave the analysis for a few minutes. When he and Aizawa will do the critiques, but with a simple glance over it, he already knows a lot will have to be changed. Okay, go ahead, I'll meet you guys soon, Isuku said, waving. A few seconds later, everyone started leaving the changing room, some more skittish than others. Isuku could faintly hear his dad's voice from outside as he spoke to All Might. Then Isuku put down their case and opened it carefully, already grinning at his costume. They've been waiting for years for this. They finally have a real hero costume, and it seems that Majima-sen didn't hold back on it. First, the costume consisted of a jumpsuit, similar to his dad's. Yeah, Isuku asked specifically for it. Sue him, and with the same reinforcements to protect his vital parts. The right half of the suit was red, and the left half was black, with a circular switch in the chest region. Next, the boots were a simple and functional pair of combat boots. The left boot was red, and the right boot was black, opposing the suit's colors. The soles had several holes, perfect for the flames. Fingerless knuckle gloves, in the same pattern as the boots. The black half of the costume wears the red glove, and the red half wears the black glove. 2 bracelets, following the color pattern of the suit. A briefcase with 5 arrows, darts, some bottles of different colors. 2 cameras, about the size of a marble ball, and a set of 6 rings and a slightly larger one. Plus some basics, like capture tape, first aid kit, energetic cereal bar for night patrols. A black cloak, with several pockets on the inside, similar to the one they always used. The difference being that the button that fastens it is shaped like a skull. Nice detail. And last but not least, the mask. The skull mask has become their main symbol. There's no way Isuku would change it now. And of course, Majima-sen did a fantastic job with it. The style of the mask is the same as the one Isuku has always worn, but with a bonus, protected eyes. There was also a tiny button on the side of each eye. Quickly putting on his clothes, Isuku continued to look through the case. A note explaining the features of the costume and support gear. Hello, Isuku. Sorry for the delay, but I finally finished your costume. As you requested, the costume can freely change between you two as you wish. Just turn the switch on the chest. Right for black, left for red, and center for bicolor. Testing it. When Isuku turned the switch to the left, the suit, boots, and gloves turned completely red. Then, turning it to the right, it became black. Perfect. Grinning under his mask, Isuku turned it back to the center, and the suit went back to the original half black, half red. Then he looked back at the note. The gloves are for Ifrit. They have plating in the knuckles for extra punching and protection, and they are heat conductive. The entire costume and support gear must be able to easily resist up to blue flames. But I didn't find a way to make it resist your purple flames yet. The cloak was the simplest part. I kept the original design of your cloak and only added a few details. The black color should absorb any light, so you will be untraceable in the dark unless the person has some sort of detection quirk. The inside is full of pockets to store your gadgets. The arrows we talked about are stored in the case. 5 arrows. They must be durable enough to withstand yellow flames without melting. But take it easy. The vials, be careful with them, okay. The blue one is a tranquilizing drug. The yellow is paralyzing. The darts are hollow, so you can put the drug inside them. The moment they pierce the target, the drug is released. The dosage can be adjusted. The transparent bottle has a flammable liquid. Coat the arrow, then apply a small flame, and boom. Flaming arrow. A coating should last about 10 minutes. Simply wrap the arrow in your cloak if you need to put out the fire sooner. The oxygen cut should extinguish the fire instantly. The rings, press them against the person, and they will trap them like handcuffs. Since you said, it's harder to hold on to humans or animals when they are resisting. They are designed to attach to key areas of the body. The recommendation is wrists, shoulders, ankles, and knees. The largest ring is for the neck. The mask is reinforced, so it should give your face some protection, but it's not too much, so be careful. The eyes are protected, and the glass is one way only. If you press the switch on the chest, the eyes will glow in the color your suit currently is, and the mouth can open up so you can breathe fire through it. I made it to detect when you open your mouth in the right way. The buttons on your mask work together with the cameras. You will see an R and an L on each camera. The R camera is connected to the button on the right, the L to the button on the left. Press the button and the camera starts recording. Any recording will be transmitted directly to the corresponding eye in the mask. Besides keeping a copy of the recording on the memory card that I have installed in the hood of your cloak. Be careful. An electric shock will fry the cameras instantly. The video recording will be safe, but these cameras are difficult to build. Finally, the bracelets. These gave me a little trouble, but I managed to make them just as you wanted. They are strong enough to be used as a blockade against blade and bullet attacks. But that's not what you wanted them for. Your chains were adapted and placed inside them as you wanted. It was very hard to find an alloy strong enough to keep the chains thin, light, and practical. You owe me a coffee for this one. To launch the chains, you must make specific movements. Just press your fingers on the palms, and they come back. Make a drawing motion from the shoulders, and it will launch the neutral chains. They are as heavy as Nimiri's whip and should hold as much as your dad's scarf. Make a drawing motion from the waist, and you will throw the flammable chains. One tiny spark, and the whole chain will catch fire. Throwing your arm, like you want to stab something, you throw the grappling hook. The tip of the chain is tipped like a dagger, and as soon as it pierces something, it will open into a hook to attach to the pierced surface. That's the gist of it. If you need any adjustments or changes, you come straight to me, right? Absolutely under no circumstances are you to interact with the pink-haired girl named Hatsume. Hatsume, this name is familiar. Where did Isuku hear it before? Oh, well, they can look at it later. For now, Isuku finished putting on the bracelets and the cloak. Then he slid the vials and arrows in the pockets of his cloak in the waistline, together with a few other utility things, like a first aid kit. And of course, there is no shortage of space for jelly pouches. What? He's Aizawa's son. Of course, he eats this stuff. He keeps the suit in the neutral position and goes back to the ground beta to meet the rest of the class. And they enter just in time to see a golden scene. All Might look pale as a ghost, and every single person in the room seems either confused, terrified, or both, while Dad is simply standing there with his neutral expression. No, scratch that. His lips are curved 0.5 millimeter upwards. The bastard is loving the scene. Kuzu is really hoping someone recorded what happened. Meeting his dad's eyes, Izuku tilted his head in All Might's direction, but Shouda simply shrugged. Now that everyone is here, let's start with the combat training, Shouda said with as much disdain as he could. Since All Might has assured me that nothing will go wrong, I'll just be watching. He gave a pointed look at All Might, and Izuku is sure he saw the giant man shiver and his right hand twitched for a second. Now that you're all ready, we can start, All Might said. Sir, Ada shouted, raising his hand. All Might nodded. This is the fake city from our entrance exam. Does that mean that we'll be conducting urban battles again? Not quite. I'm going to move you 2 steps ahead. Oh, Izuku doesn't like where this is going. Most of the villain fights you see on the news take place outside. However, statistically speaking, run-ins with the most dastardly evildoers take place indoors, All Might explained proudly. And Izuku can't help the shiver he's feeling at where this is going. We won't be using robots this time, which can only mean one thing, and it's bad. Sir, will you be the one deciding who wins? Ida asked. Do we need to worry about the losers getting expelled like earlier? Uraraka asked. Will you be splitting us up based on chance or comparative skill? Yaoyorozu asked. Isn't this cape beautiful? Aoyama asked, and at that, Izuku blinked and looked at the boy. Yeah, it's a cool cape, but it doesn't look practical. Mental note for later. Calm down, calm down. I'll explain everything in a second. Then All Might put on a pair of glasses. What do you know? And a Godamnit script. Couldn't even memorize his lesson plan. Really, the situation is this. The villains have hidden a nuclear missile somewhere in their hideout. The heroes must try to foil their plans. The class had quieted down by then. To do that, the good guys either have to catch the evildoers or recover the weapon. Likewise, the bad guys succeed if they protect their payload or capture the heroes. Dad looked torn between trying not to laugh and trying not to facepalm. Izuku rarely felt as tired as his dad, but this is one of those times. We'll be deciding the teams by drawing lots. Isn't there a better way? Ida asked. It's logical if you think about it. Yaoyorozu replied to him. Most of the time pro heroes have to team up with heroes from other agencies on the spot. Yes, it makes sense. Pro heroes rarely get to choose who they team up with. But this something being All Might's confused face, tells Izuku this isn't the reason All Might decided to do it this way. Anyway, with the explanation out of the way, they started drawing the teams. As it said, the draws were mostly random, but the last team wasn't. Dad made sure that those 3 would be last and paired together. Why? Because Zuko asked him for a chance to observe them closer. Takoyami Fumikage, Todoroki Shoudo, and Kaminari Denki. Due to the expulsion of a student, the options were for someone to fight alone or for a team to have 3 people. Therefore, these 3 will form a team. Sensei, Kaminari raised his hand. All the teams are paired already. Will someone fight twice? No, young Kaminari, All Might replied. Instead, your team will face another person. Me, Zuko chirped. Exactly. The last battle will be young Takoyami, Todoroki, and Kaminari against young Aizawa. All Might said. Wait, they'll face a pro hero. Ashido asked. Is that fair? Absolutely not, Zuko replied. That's why we are making it fair. He raised his hand, showing 3 fingers. They'll be fighting as a trio. Kuzu won't participate, only me. And last, I'll be fighting quirkless. How will you fight without your quirk? Ida asked. Isn't that too dangerous? At this statement, Zuko simply lifted his mask, showing his face to the students. Don't underestimate the quirkless, Ida-kun, Zuko said, grinning. You'll regret it. This combat exercise went a little better than Izuku expected. Not that it's surprising. Their expectation was so low that the surprise would be if it didn't go better than he expected. But to be fair, even with Aizawa having let All Might get on with his lesson plan, he made sure to give the class a big lecture on self-control, caution, and safety. And, probably out of fear of the hobo teacher, most took the warnings seriously. After all, nobody wants to be expelled. Thankfully, most students suffered only light wounds. The first match was Shiro and Hagakure as heroes, against Ashido and Kirishima as villains. Shiro discovered just how corrosive Ashido's acid is, and that his tape is a horrible match up against it. But, thankfully, he just had some light burns and Hagakure was simply made for this task. The moment she ended in the hero's team, the exercise was basically won. Sadly, since Kirishima never saw Hagakure approaching, he never got to even start showing how he fights. Nobody had any doubt when the MVP went to Hagakure. Shinsu and Uraraka as heroes, against Ada and Bakugo as villains, went better than Izuku expected. Once more, Shinsu proved how much he deserves to be there, when he tricked Bakugo into replying to him and activated his quirk. In a show of coordination and strategy, Shinsu used Bakugo's explosions to break the floor where Ada was guarding the bomb, and Uraraka used the opportunity to touch and float Ada to the ceiling and capture the bomb. A great show of teamwork. And again, everyone agreed to consider Shinsu the MVP since the plan was basically his. Except Shinsu himself, who tried to say it should be Uraraka. Mental note: build Shinsu's self-confidence ASAP. The victim of this match was Uraraka, who had to go to the infirmary after her breakfast decided to drop by to say hello. Drawback of her quirk: Sato and Ajiro as heroes, against Kuda and Jiru as villains, was really interesting. There weren't any animals that Kuda could call for help, but with the help of Jiru's quirk, they made a sound like a dog's whistle that called dozens of birds to help them. Again, a great show of teamwork and creativity. Sato and Ajiro fought well, each in their own style, but as soon as Sato's sugar started to run out, they ended up overwhelmed by the swarm of birds and lost. This time, the MVP went to both Kuda and Jiru. No one was hurt too badly here, but Ajiro and Sato may have developed a healthy fear of birds. Asui and Shaoji as heroes, against Yaorazu and Aoyama as villains, could have gone better. Asui and Shaoji showed great synergy between Shaoji's brute strength with his 6 arms and Asui frog-like agility. Yaorazu and Aoyama were a bit less coordinated. Aoyama was too distracted by his cape and was ambushed and captured early on. From there, Yaorazu barricaded herself inside the room with the bomb and used defensive strategies to buy time. With flash grenades, barricades, and well-placed traps, she almost won by herself. However, with a well-matched joint attack, Shaoji managed to distract her long enough for Asui to be able to jump over her and reach the bomb in the last 10 seconds. Despite losing, Yaorazu deservedly took the MVP of the match. This was the cleanest match of all. No one suffered more than a few scratches. After each match, Aizawa commented on the key points, as well as offering criticism on what could be improved. After this, the last match was about to begin. Zuko as hero, against Kaminari, Takoyami, and Todoroki as villains. As agreed, Kuzu will be sitting this one out, and Zuko will be fighting quirkless. Also, in this exercise, the villains clearly have an advantage, since they have 5 minutes to scout the area, and chose where to hide the bomb. All Might said that true heroes must be able to adapt to any kind of situation, and he's not wrong. But still, this is too advanced for first years. Izuku had 4 years of experience as a vigilante. And even so, his dad only let him take part in this kind of practice in his 2nd year of training. To regular students, this probably would be something that a 3rd year would do. At least no one broke anything, though this is probably more because most of them hold back a bit in fear of Aizawa. As soon as the starting signal went off, Izuku sat down, waiting for the 5 minutes and forming his strategy in the meantime. The reason Izuku took an interest in these 3 right away is quite simple. In terms of brute strength, these 3 have the strongest quirks in the class. However, the more powerful the quirk, the more difficult it is to control. Todoroki's quirk is half hot, half cold, an elemental quirk that allows him to generate fire from half of his body and ice from the other half. Incredibly powerful. And with him being the youngest Todoroki, and with Izuku knowing what he knows about Taoya, a lot of red flags are being raised here. But the talk about abuse will have to wait for later. Now Izuku needs to see how familiar Todoroki is with his quirk. Takoyami's quirk is Dark Shadow, a sentient quirk, in the form of a raven made of shadows. The mere fact that it is sentient should make it extremely difficult to control. But the name Dark Shadow already gives Izuku some ideas of what their strengths and weaknesses might be. Kaminari's quirk is Electrification, an emitter quirk that allows him to use electricity to attack. And frankly, the scariest of the bunch. If Kaminari has good control of his quirk, he can easily be one of the strongest in the class. However, if he doesn't have good control, it can be very dangerous for him. Taking a deep breath, Izuku stands up and prepares his gear. Taking 2 darts, he puts the sleeping drug in one and the paralyzing drug in the other, then reduces the dosage to the minimum. He checks the bracelets, making sure they are working as intended. His costume is left all black, and his eyes are deactivated. Young Aizawa, time is up. You can go in now. All Might called through the communicator, instead of running through the door or a window. Zuko calmly walks along the side of the building, following the visible electricity wiring to the power box. Grabbing his pocket knife, Isuku quickly opens the box and cuts all the wires, effectively shutting down all the power in the building and turning off all the lights. Everyone knows how Limelight heroes fight, break in through the front door and smash everything in their path. The more show off the better. But what Isuku will show everyone are the tactics of an underground hero. If he can inspire some students, all the better. Next, Zuko throws his grappling hook just below the second floor window and climbs up to it. He hears a voice from inside and stops before entering. It's all out. It's Kaminari's voice, but no sign of him. Todoroki is still with the bomb, right? Indeed he is. This is Tokoyami, and he'll freeze the entire building any second now if someone doesn't stop him. The entire building? What a show-off, Kaminari joked. If he does, we'll be caught on his attack too. Well, he doesn't seem to care. A third voice called. Oh, it's Dark Shadow. And frankly, I want to fight too. Behave, Shadow. Tokoyami chided. Let's check the next floor. He might have climbed through a window. All right, I'll stay here. And then Kaminari stopped. No sign of him. Oh, he's talking to Todoroki. It must be a communicator. I'm on the second floor. And Tokoyami is about to go check the third. A few seconds pass again. All right, we'll try. Revel in the darkness. Tokoyami calls and starts walking again. Zuko waits a few seconds in case someone comes back, then enters through the window. Thanks to the window, it is not too dark, but a few rooms inside, there's much less light, which is perfect for Zuko to hide. As expected, Kaminari is patrolling the area, his quirk sparking around his body making it glow. A good strategy, since he doesn't have a flashlight, but it also shows exactly his position. The fastest knockdown would be to hit him with a sleeping dart. Zuko sneaks closer to him, taking the dart in his hand, and stops just behind Kaminari. He approaches the arrow to the back of his neck, then stops, puts the dart away, and instead lightly touches Kaminari's shoulder. In a real situation, you would already have been caught, he said, then jumped back when Kaminari turned to look at him, already hiding in the shadows again. What the? Where are you? He asked. Zuko, smiling under his mask, started circling him through the room. He pressed the switch in his suit, activating the glowing eyes. I'm right here, villain-kun, Zuko said in a teasing tone. Then deactivated the eyes again and jumped out of the way of Kaminari's charge. You're too slow. Want to try again? Okay, try to dodge that one, Kaminari said. Joining his hands, Zuko saw the electricity crawling through Kaminari's body, then he directed all to the floor. Indiscriminate shock 1.3 million volts. And then, there was electricity flying everywhere. Zuko quickly aimed his grappling hook to the ceiling and reeled, avoiding the attack completely. Okay, I have to admit, this is pretty powerful, but Zuko stopped talking when he saw Kaminari's face. The boy had a hollow expression, and was walking around with two thumbs up and making an unrecognizable sound. What? Are you okay, Kaminari-kun? He dropped back to the floor and walked closer, but Kaminari didn't react. Oh god, did you just short-circuited your brain? Again no response. We need to correct this ASAP, Zuko mumbled. Then took the capture tape from his cloak and gently wrapped it around Kaminari's waist, then tied it to a wall. Kaminari Denki is captured, All Might announced. Now, I need to keep going. Tokoyami or Todoroki will be checking this place soon, Zuko mumbled, then, giving Kaminari a last glance to make sure he was okay. He moved on. Finding the stairs to the next floor was quite easy, but instead of climbing, Zuko opted to wait. His patience was soon rewarded when he heard footsteps approaching. A single person, the footsteps almost inaudible, which indicates that it is someone light, probably Tokoyami. He must have bones like those of birds, which would make him quite light for someone that size. When he arrives, instead of immediately looking for Zuko, Tokoyami leaves the dark room as quickly as possible, immediately going to one of the windowed rooms. Interesting choice. If Zuko's hunch is correct, Dark Shadow becomes stronger in dark places, so why give up this advantage? Following Tokoyami, he overhears a conversation. Calm down, Shadow. We can't lose ourselves in a situation like this. But Fumi, I want to fight. This is the perfect situation. Dark Shadow whined. Zuko grinned under his mask and started walking closer. What an interesting thing he just overheard. Interesting, want to tell me more, he said, and two pair of eyes instantly snapped to him. Tokoyami seemed shocked for a moment, and Dark Shadow instantly lunged to attack Zuko. Zuko sidestepped, and Dark Shadow hit the wall behind him, destroying it instantly. Powerful. What else do you have, little bird? Zuko teased, and Dark Shadow lunged again. This time Zuku crouched, avoiding the hit again, then took a few steps back. Calm down, Shadow. Don't fall for his provocation. Takoyami tried to reason, but Dark Shadow was ignoring him. After a few seconds, Zuku saw Takoyami being dragged closer. There must be a limit to the distance the Dark Shadow can travel from Takoyami. If Zuku is going to take a guess, about 5 meters. Come on, little bird. Catch me if you can. Zuku provoked again, going deeper into the darkness. Oh, you won't escape, Dark Shadow said, and lunged again, this time faster and stronger. The darker it is, the stronger he or is she. I'll have to ask later. Anyway, the darker it is, the bigger and stronger Dark Shadow becomes. Zuku mumbled to himself, avoiding another attack. But it seems they get more aggressive and straightforward too. Very predictable. We will have to work on this problem. Then Izuku made a drawing motion starting from his waist, and each bracelet shot a chain. Swinging both chains, Zuku hit one on the other, drawing a spark that ignited the whole chain. Dark Shadow instantly shrieked and backed away from the flames. Zuku then pressed the fingers of his left hand against his palm, pulling back the chain, keeping only the one in his right hand. And with his left he quickly pulled out one of the darts. Swinging the chain, he made Dark Shadow retreat even further, and taking advantage of the momentum, he threw the dart, hitting Takoyami's opposite forearm, who immediately stopped moving and fell to the ground. What kind of sorcery is this? Takoyami asked from the floor. Not sorcery, science, Zuku chirped. I applied a minimal dosage, so you should be able to move again within 5 minutes. Then Zuku approached and gently picked up Takoyami in his arms. I will have to capture you now, but I will leave you in a place with more light. Then Zuku went into the room with the windows where they had started fighting and gently placed Takoyami on the floor against the wall. Then he opened all the windows. Thank you, Takoyami said softly as Zuku approached him with the capture tape. Don't worry, I know how it is to be afraid of the dark, Zuku said, lifting his mask to show him his smile. Then he took 2 jelly pouches from his cloak and placed them on the ground near them. I don't know your preference, but I have heard that Dark Shadow likes apples. Apple flavor is the best I have at the moment. Then he wrapped the capture tape around Takoyami's arm and stood up to leave the room. Takoyami Fumikage is captured, All Might announced, and Zuku smiled to himself. You know, if you worked together you would have a good chance of victory, he said, then went back to the stairs before Takoyami could reply. Going up the stairs, Zuku started searching around. He was on the 3rd floor. The building has 6 floors. The most obvious floor to hide the bomb on would be the last floor. After all, it would take the longest to reach. But at the same time it is too obvious. Kaminari was patrolling the 2nd floor, and Takoyami the 3rd. Apparently Todoroki is guarding the bomb. Zuku decides that the 3rd floor must not be the right one and continues to the 4th. He should have tried to ask. Dark Shadow would probably have let something slip. Oh, well, too late now. To his surprise, he easily finds the bomb on the 4th floor just 2 rooms away from the stairs. The location makes sense, considering that there is only one door to this room. Todoroki is just in front of the bomb, watching the entrance attentively. If Zuku tried to throw a dart now, he would probably hit it, but he wants to try to see something of Todoroki's fighting style as well. Smiling, Zuku decides to throw away the stealth. He activates the eyes of the mask again, effectively revealing his position, and walks to the door. The moment he steps inside the room, he feels a cold draft and within seconds the whole room is frozen, and Zuku's feet are stuck to the floor. Powerful, Zuku comments smiling, but wasn't freezing the whole room a bit much? Better not to give you any chance to escape, Todoroki said in his inexpressive voice. And what will you do now? You haven't captured me yet, Zuku provoked. And you can't move, Todoroki replied. There's not much you can do now. Oh, he is underestimating Zuku. That is a mistake you only make once. Zuku slips his hand through the cloak. He knows that the only really visible part of him are his eyes. With the black cloak, nothing else is visible in this darkness. Careful not to make any noise, Izuku picked up his javelin and threw it, hitting Todoroki right in the neck. Never underestimate an enemy, Zuku said. Your enemies will not always play fair. In 5 seconds Todoroki was on the floor, asleep. Now, to free himself, Zuku had a few tricks he could use. He could simply take off his boot and walk to bomb in his socks. He could use the flaming whip again. Or he could use the hook. Aiming his grappling hook up, Zuku shot it to the ceiling, then pulled himself, breaking the ice from his foot and freeing himself. Then, dropping back to the floor, Zuku walked to the bomb and touched it. The bomb has been captured. The heroes won, All Might announced. Good job, Zuku. His dad called in the communicator. Takoyami is leaving and helping Kaminari. I'll carry Todoroki then. He'll be out for a few more minutes. The sleep drug should last around 10 minutes. Anything worrying? Only Kaminari, but he will be sent straight to Chiyo. Dad replied. We're going to have a lot to work on with this class, Dad. Zuku replied. Can I leave now? I want to start the analysis now to have everything ready by tomorrow. No all-nighters, his dad scolded. Pot, meat, kettle, Izuku replied. You're a brat. Your brat. My brat. Dad confirmed. Go on, I'll handle the rest of the class. Thanks, Dad, Izuku replied. I promise to try to sleep. I'll hold you on that promise, Dad replied, then logged out of the communication. Smiling to himself, Izuku made way to his office. Yes, he has an office, to start working on his analyses. The first thing he did was to divide the students into 3 groups, based on their control over their quirks. Excellent, acceptable, and work on it at SOP. To no one's surprise, most students fit in acceptable. Izuku put Yaorazu, Anjiro, and Kuda into the excellent group based on what they showed today, but if necessary, they can be moved. The work on it at SOP group was reserved to the ones that are actively hurting themselves with their quirks and could suffer long-term damage if not corrected. Thankfully, only 2 students are in this group this year, Kaminari and Aoyama. Aoyama suffers stomach aches if he uses his laser for more than 1 second, so Izuku needs to make sure his quirk isn't messing with his organs before creating a strategy to work with him. Depending on what they discover, Izuku might move him into the acceptable group and ask Uncle Mike to help him with his train. Present Mike has much more experience at teaching students to learn control. And Kaminari, this is an urgent case. If Kaminari continues to short-circuit his own brain, he may suffer irreversible damage. This is a case that Izuku has already decided to take into his own hands. Besides Kaminari, the students that Izuku really wants to talk to are Todoroki, Takoyami, and Shinsu. All 3 demonstrate the same problem but in different ways. They are afraid of their own quirk. Todoroki, so far, has not used his flames at any point, another red flag since he is the son of Endeavor. Whether this is fear or a rebellion, Izuku has no idea, but certainly Todoroki does not have adequate control of his flames. Takoyami seems to be afraid of losing control, and therefore afraid of the dark. He and Dark Shadow seem to act like brothers, but at the same time, Takoyami shows fear. Maybe some kind of trauma, something to be questioned later. Shinsu has serious self-esteem issues, as well as having no idea about the limits of his brainwashing. Who was the idiot who chose that name? Izuku will talk to Nenzu later to see if it's possible to change later. He probably never had a chance to train it. Shinsu and Todoroki show signs of abuse. Unfortunately, until I finish building the case against Endeavor, not much can be done to help Todoroki except to keep him as long as possible away from the flaming garbage can. Now, for Shinsu, Izuku can do something. They only hope that the boy will accept their help. They know that Shinsu is in the system, and as someone who chose to live on the streets rather than end up in foster care, Izuku knows how Shinsu must be treated. Facing the shelf with 19 notebooks that Izuku organized this morning before class, they pick up the first notebook with a Pikachu on the cover and begin to write. They have a lot of work to do and they promised they would try to sleep tonight.